controlling person.
Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the Los Angeles City Council. Today is Tuesday, September 26th, 2006. The Los Angeles City Council meets each Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. here in City Council chambers, named after former President John Ferraro, the Ferraro Council Chambers, room 340 on the third floor of City Hall. We invite members of the public to come down to our meetings and to be a part of them through our public comment, items which have been agendized for public comment, and our agendas are available through our city's webpage at www.lacity.org. The meetings are open to the public. You can also testify if you can't make it here to City Hall in Van Nuys via remote facility if that's closer to where you live. And the first Friday of the month, we actually take the meeting out to the San Fernando Valley in Van Nuys, and folks who live closer to downtown can testify here, remote on those days. We are broadcast live each meeting on Channel 35 and rebroadcast in the evening. Channel 35, LA City View, your channel, where there's a whole lineup of information and programs on the workings of city government and the happenings in Los Angeles. If you aren't close to a television, you can always tune in via webcast, also at our city's homepage, www.lacity.org, and you can watch live streaming web video of the council meetings. Lastly, if you're not close to a computer or a television, you can call on telephone and listen to the proceedings of both the full city council and our committees at any time, and that is available through council phone, which the number is 213-621-CITY. We currently have 6 members of the City Council here. Pursuant to council rules, the council members should be here in their seats. And we have Councilmember Cardenas, Labange, Parks, Perry, Zine here. I'd like to ask the council members that are not here yet to make their way down to council as soon as possible. That's Councilmember Gruhl, Councilmember Hahn, Councilmember Huizar, Councilmember Reyes, Councilmember Rosendahl, Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Weiss, and Councilmember Wesson. Councilmember Padilla is excused to arrive later today at 11:30 due to council business. So as soon as we have a quorum, we will begin the meeting. I want to thank the members of the public and our viewing public who are here and watching, and we will begin as soon as we have 2/3, 10 members of 15, and a quorum present. Thank you.
Parks, Perry Reyes, Rosendahl Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti, 11 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Labange moves, Mr. Reyes seconds. If there's no objection, those minutes are approved. Next item.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
I will move those, and Ms. Perry seconds. If there's no objection, those two will be approved.
And, Mr. President, this is Tuesday, and there is a flag salute.
Okay. Ms. Gruhl, would you be kind enough to lead us in a salute to the flag? And if I can ask everybody to please stand in council chambers for the Pledge of Allegiance.
You could all rise. Thank you. Please put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. Next order of business.
Mr. President, this is the time for comments from the public on items not on council's agenda.
Okay, we'll open public comment, general public comment right now. I'd like to have Michael Carrion come forward to speak. And then Sky Anderson, 2 minutes, please. Good morning.
Yes. My name is Michael Carrion, and I'm here to speak on the issue of the homeless in downtown. Can I get your attention, please? Apparently, everybody here seems to be interested in the homeless when the newspapers are around, when TV reporters are around, but none of you seem to get off your seats to go downtown and see what's going on down there. This is not a homeless issue. This is a mental health issue. People are self-medicating themselves because this city council has dropped the ball. This mayor is more interested in putting money into developers' hands than he is to deal with the homeless. The only time this mayor goes downtown is for a photo op, to sit next to somebody and take a picture. He doesn't want to help the homeless. He wants to move them out so he can make more money. Downtown is a thriving real estate department for him. It's big money. But this city council doesn't seem to care. Mr. Garcetti seems to be going through his papers more than anything else instead of paying attention.
I'm listening and making sure
But
our
when somebody
speakers can
comes up
speak,
here
sir.
to speak, you stop everything, you tell everybody to be quiet, and you make sure they listen. And I don't think that's fair. That kind of thinking is what turns around and deters people from coming here. I come here to make sure that my point is heard. And the way the mayor's running this building, or this organization, is ridiculous. I call him Superintendent Villaraigosa because he spends so much time worrying about the school board. There's no way he has enough time to run the mayor's office too. I just don't understand it. Everybody's blinded here. Mr. Garcetti, there's an ad in yesterday's paper that you may be losing your job. You know, part of that comes from playing with this clock. The clock stops at 2 minutes, the clock goes to 1 minute, it used to be 3 minutes, but yet, when you're giving your proclamations out, they can take an hour apiece. I don't hear a clock, I don't hear a buzzer, and I don't hear you telling them they can't speak. One more thing, the Brown Act is used like a circus in here.
Thank you, sir. Next comment is from our next speaker, and then we'll go out to the Valley. Sky Anderson is next. Then we'll go out to the Valley, and then we have 2 more speakers here. Please, sir.
Sky Anderson, a citizen of I live in a hotel on the edge of Skid Row, and I see the devastation that happens there, and I want to thank, first 2 topics. One is Skid Row damage, and 2 is MTA TV on buses that distracts the drivers from driving safely. I want to thank Mr. Broughton for putting the 50-foot patrol people on Skid Row, because it's going to make a big difference as long as they maintain an aura of kindness as opposed to being bullies. 2, Skid Row problem has a lot to do with drug addicts. Drug addict is a disease. Once they get addicted, they can't stop. It's just like alcoholism. It would seem to me that the problem is there aren't enough jail spaces, and that's the county's problem. The County Board of Supervisors doesn't have a public comment section where the public can go in and freely discuss unless they wait around for half an hour, and most people aren't willing to do that. So I want to thank the City Council for allowing the public to come here and address issues. The County Board of Supervisors is so rich they feel they don't have to pay attention to the public. They have so rich they buy elections. We need more jails because you're not going to solve the addiction problem in Skid Row until we have more jail space. 2, the MTA, I don't know how they did it, but they put these TVs on buses I've talked to bus drivers, they say that if they had a choice, they would turn it down, but they don't have a choice, they turn it off. It bothers them because they can't drive safely. They're going around the corner and suddenly it'll blast at them and it's dangerous. I'm a citizen, I get $900 a month on Social Security, and I'm a captive audience. I have to listen to their ads, I have to listen to their announcements, I have to listen to their noise, and I don't think that's the way a democracy should work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Our next speaker is Bruce Darien out in the San Fernando Valley. If we can cue that up in Van Nuys. Mr. Darien, welcome.
Good afternoon, good morning, City Council. I have an article here in the LA Times, August 16th, 2006, suit over LA Port Terminal rejected. An activist has alleged misappropriation of millions intended for a so-called energy island. A federal judge has dismissed a lawsuit by Rancho Palos Verdes community activists who allege that the Port of Los Angeles misappropriated tens of millions of dollars in government money to construct a massive cargo terminal for Maerix Incorporated, the world's largest shipping line. In the ruling, United States District Court Judge James Otero wrote that he dismissed Stanley D. Mosler's case because the plaintiff was no longer represented by an attorney and thus lacked the standing to litigate a case on behalf of the United States government. Mosler also listed the state of California and himself as the plaintiffs. Well, first of all, Mr. Mosler cannot list the state of California as a plaintiff unless it is a California False Claims Act case in which California would be a plaintiff. But this is a United States False Claims Act case, as I have one, and my judge also dismissed the case under the pretense that I was not represented by counsel. I never was represented by counsel. The U.S. Attorney General and U.S. attorneys said that the case was to go forward, that I was supposed to serve the defendants, and that they have monitored the case for 6 years. They filed amicus briefs to support and to reject the defendants' motions to dismiss, and I am the whistleblower. I'm the person that has the buried treasure map. I saw where the money was stolen from, I saw how much money was stolen, and I saw who stole it. I'm the person that stands in the shoes for the United States government. I sounded the horn. I did my duty. I'm doing my job to protect the people's hard-earned dollars that are being stolen from unscrupulous contractors or others that rip off the government. I've done what I'm supposed to do. Today I stood before the flag and recited the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you,
That
Mr.
is my
Darien.
job.
If I can ask you to conclude. Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Our next speaker is Richard Robinson.
Honorable President, members, the city's homelessness problem is being solved. Because of the warm and dry summer, the numbers of homeless people is ballooning and will decrease as the winter cold shrinks exponentially those numbers. It's sort of like the ozone hole, which is larger because of the globally hot summer, because of the hottest summer in 1 million years. Sir, the henny pennies, those who are convinced that the problems that we face are unsolvable, they're wrong. The Skid Row district is the solution. Now that the foot patrols, something I've been begging for 20 years, are in place, the criminals are on the run. The largest negative element in downtown Los Angeles Skid Row is the dope dealer victimizing homeless folk. So, to make a long story short, at 5th and Main in downtown Los Angeles, the former $1 Million Hotel, a community awareness and treatment service, CATS, as Willie Brown established in '79, a long time ago, in San Francisco when he was a supervisor. A mobile assistance patrol he calls MAP. He and now Gavin Newsom have solved the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Don Garza is our next speaker.
Good morning. Good morning, City Council. Well, I don't know, but there's a lot of police wandering the streets of Skid Row. It's a strange situation. There's some female friends of mine that have just off the cuff mentioned to me how strange it feels for them to actually feel safe. It's very interesting. It's not so much a visible presence, feeling right now. It is more or less just a feeling. You know, actually being in a neighborhood where we know that there is even domestic violence happens with people living on the street. Long before Chief Bratton showed up and said those magic words and outside the Central Division, I was putting that on New Downtown Yahoo Group. Same words. It's not the condition of being homeless. I mean, it's not being homeless. It's the conditions down there that are the problem. It's the condition of lawlessness. It's the conditions of dirty and filthy streets. It's the condition of allowing people to die in a certain area of Los Angeles. And I'm grateful that hopefully this Safe City initiative goes forward, continues to allow myself and others who have illnesses other than addictions, but I also believe addiction is a disease, knowing about the neurological and biological basis of it. And to prey on people, it's like, you know, me being diabetic and somebody, you know, constantly bringing over cakes and donuts and everything, and it's just sitting right there, you know, they're just killing me. So I'm glad that the settlement was rejected, or I don't know what the terminology for that is. We'll see what happens, and I'm going to continue to say, let's continue to make my neighborhood a safer place to live.
Thank you, Don. Dr. Morris is next.
Council. Mr. President, there are two issues I want to present today. One is this agenda. Is it possible that we could have like a table of contents so you could very quickly see what the motions are, as opposed to having to go through all the pages, maybe sometimes 60 motions?
We'll talk to the clerk's
And
office. Thank you.
secondly, there's a rat infestation downtown. And, the defecating and urinating and the people walking it, taking it to the tents. I notice now the older rats, the hairs are dropping off, and the younger ones coming up and just taking a breath and dying. Now, I'm not sure if it's widespread, but I wish if probably we could have this, two members could support it, we could get it onto this agenda tomorrow, so that we could pursue it. Because you remember in the Middle Ages, we had this big scourge because of rats, transmitting disease. You have the fleas jumping off of them, biting individuals. This could be a very serious public health issue, just, hanging there. So I wish that we could look into it and see if we could solve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. Candido Morris is our next speaker.
Good morning, Mr. President, council members. Candido Maris, living at 6179 Van Nuys Boulevard, where in November you will see the beginning of the rebirth of Van Nuys Boulevard. Mr. President, council members, I'd like to pass out this form here, if I might. I want you to all take a look at it. It goes back to 1995. Talks about another death that took place in the city of Los Angeles. Stephanie McEwen. Does anybody remember that little girl? We had another little girl killed this weekend, 3-year-old, Caitlin. How many times have we come before this council and over again we've seen the rewards offered for the murders, the cowards that continued to kill our children, and yet nothing is done. So I just wanted to give you this so that you all would remember this name that goes back to 1995, Stephanie McEwen, and the little girl that was killed just a few days ago. Mr. President, council members, it's got to stop. Sooner or later, it's got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Candido. Appreciate your comments. Matt Dowd is our next speaker.
Thank you. Reset the clock. It's good to be back. It's nice to see Mr. Weezar back in here. I haven't seen him since I saw that look on your face when Jan Perry pulled that move last Wednesday. I don't know if you caught my comments about the even number council districts need to make sure they align themselves with the ethical side of this chamber, because the odd numbers, excluding Mr. Rosendahl, of course, who's in the safest district of all right now. Garcetti may be losing grip on the top job. That's the second bad piece of press I've seen. I remember one with you and your dad in the Daily News about bypassing the Ethics Commission. See, now that's the kind of thing that people up here, people on TV, they notice that kind of stuff, and it's not going to go away. So this is what you have to do. You have to align yourselves with the right people, and Tom LaBonge, like I said, he's going all the way to the top, and you have to drop this fighting the Prop R and all this waste of litigation money, and get your attorneys onto Sacramento to start reimbursing the city for all the money that you spend on terror prevention and disaster preparedness. I'm going to talk about that in a little while because I noticed that's on the agenda today. But Tom, if you want to know, the mayor just named the guy you want to talk to, his name is Arif Ali Khan. He's just been named the public safety deputy. And what you need to do is work with him because there's $500 million in Sacramento that's getting tied up in red tape for disaster preparedness. And you can't just be handing out little things to people to put in their homes. We need places, and Skid Row, there's the guinea pigs to get the disaster preparedness, because that's what LA is going to look like if there is a big disaster. We're all going to be on Skid Row. You need to think about that.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Our last speaker is KM Key.
Good morning, City Council members, and particularly Chief Parks, or former Chief Parks, Councilmember Parks. I live between 6th and 7th Street on Wall Street. I'm looking at the LA Times and photographs from the Daily News regarding Sunday's police action. There's a photograph of LAPD officer Brian Frierson detains a suspect on Skid Row. The police then determined the man was not violating a law and released him. This morning, and I took photographs in my cell phone, as I came out of my home and walked down to 7th Street, I saw 4 police officers and a man handcuffed while he was given a jaywalking ticket. Now, I know that there is an increased police presence. I know that you think that police action is going to cure the medical issue of addiction in Skid Row. But I say to you that Carol Schatz, Estella Lopez, and Mr. Gilmore would never be subject to being handcuffed, more or less, even if they were given a jaywalking ticket. So we've been here before in this council. I'm a member of LA CAN. I live in the community. What are these new police officers, former Chief Parks, doing handcuffing people who are given jaywalking tickets, who are suspected and then released? And again, my voice falls on deaf ears because I'm not a business person. I'm merely someone who's subjected to this. We as a community are already immune to these police actions. But what are you teaching these brand new officers that they can put somebody in handcuffs to give them a citation for an offense for which they could never, ever be imprisoned for? There's something wrong there, and there's something that speaks to these officers understanding that constitutional rights apparently don't exist for people of color in Skid Row. But let it happen to Carol Schatz.
Our next speaker is Sylvia Lynn Hawkins. Thank you. Sylvia Lynn Hawkins is our next speaker. Our last speaker for public comment.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ms. Sylvia L. Hawkins. Again, this is public comments on anything on and off the agenda. I would like to direct these comments to Councilman Resvadal and the council board. This will be my last week at the City Hall of Los Angeles, California. I would like to say thank you for all that assisted me and helped me as in receiving money. Councilman Resvadal asked me to come to this microphone to ask this council board as of in lifting an offering that will help me as of in travel plan, as of in receiving a ticket where he will be in charge of lifting the offering from each council member as he see fit. It's not really a certain amount of money I need, but if you can help in helping me to receive a ticket, I did go to the airlines and their tickets is very high. Greyhound is counter mile, but I do not have a price tag on it. So I would like to say special thanks to Councilman Resvadal as he continued to assist me and help me as he see fit. Thank you very much. My name is Ms. Sylvia Hawkins.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. That's our, Mr. Rosendahl. Did you want to respond to something? I'm sorry.
Mr. President, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but some of you might know that Sylvia has been homeless and comes here every day and talks in public comment. Over the year, she and I have had a relationship of sorts regarding helping her through her day. And she is leaving. She's going to Tennessee. She's going to get on a bus. If anybody feels like I do that we want to help her in her bus and help her with her life, great. And I just want to thank her for her public involvement with all of us over the last year. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. We can run through the agenda now. First items, please.
Mr. President, I understand that council wished to take 2 items out of order.
Yeah, let's run through the agenda first, and then we'll go to take any items out of order.
Okay. First items on the agenda are items noticed for public hearings, items 1 through 7, and the recommendation for council action would be to open the public hearings and continue the hearings and ordinances to October 17th.
Okay, if there's no objection, colleagues, we will open those and continue the ordinances till the 17th of October. Next items, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have been held, items 8 through 21. On item number 21, the committee report has been submitted and distributed to the council members.
Okay. Colleagues, any specials for items 8 through 21? Specials, colleagues?
And also, Mr. President, I believe on item number 21, there is a PowerPoint presentation if council wishes to call that special.
Okay. Colleagues, specials for these items? 21 we will call special. Ms. Gruhl? Any other ones, colleagues? If not, going once, going twice, let's open the roll. Let's close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have not been held, items 22 through 59. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, I see cards on item 35, 39, and 46, so we'll call those special. We'll open and close the public hearings on all the rest. Specials, 36 for Mr. Zine. Ms. Perry?
Cool, got it, you got it.
You got it? Okay. 30, and which one? Yes. 49 also for Mr. Zine. Other specials? Any other specials, colleagues? Okay. All right. Sorry?
55.
Yes, 55 for Ms. Hahn. All right. If there's no other specials, on the balance of the item, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
That would take council back to the items called special, and I understand.
Let's call a roll on the special meeting, and we'll continue that back in, please.
Cardenas, Gruhl, Hahn, Weezer, Labange, Padilla, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Weston, Zine, Garcetti, 14 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, let's call number 1 special, and if we can continue the meeting into the regular meeting. Okay. And Mr. Zine, you wanted to take out of order which number?
36.
36. Is there any objection to taking 36 out of order? If not, let's take that up first. And I know Mr. Zine wanted to introduce a special guest we have in chambers as well. Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very honored to have with us a member of the state legislature. Alberto Tarico is here with us today, going to take the center table. The Assemblyman has Assembly Bill 1873. If you can have a seat, please.
Welcome,
1873, we want to welcome you to City Hall. And I know you flew in from Sacramento and the traffic coming in, we appreciate you being here. The Assemblyman has a bill before the governor. It's sitting before the governor for signature, Assembly Bill 1873. This is a bill that will extend the safe surrender law from the current 72 hours to 30 days. And the concern is that we have this extension for the issue of individuals, for whatever reason, abandon children. And this safe surrender law has proven very effective in the state of California. The Assemblyman's here personally to urge us to support this and to explain the urgency and the purpose for Assembly Bill 1873, the extension of this safe surrender law. So if you can give an introduction, and I'll have some questions for you, Mr. Assemblyman, and hopefully my colleagues will all support this and get this into law.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you for the introduction, Councilman Zion, and Mr. President, thank you for allowing me to present the bill. Very brief, I know there will be a series of questions, but let me just tell you why I introduced the bill. This year at the beginning, in January, about 2 miles from my house, a young baby was found in a garbage can at a Jack in the Box, wrapped in a blanket, left there all night, and the baby was found dead. The irony of this is that the Jack in the Box was 2 blocks away from a fire station where the baby could have been surrendered. So I asked my staff to look into the situation, look at current law, and we found several shortcomings in the law. 1, public awareness, and 2, the 3 days. So I've introduced a bill to extend it to 30 days, and very appreciative of your support and your having me be here today. It's received bipartisan support in the Assembly and the Senate, including 70 out of 80 members of the Assembly. We've sent it to the governor's desk. It sits there today, and he has until the end of the month to sign it. And I encourage your questions, and I appreciate very much your support.
And some of the issues, also you represent Northern California, Fremont, Newark, Union City, Milpitas, parts of San Jose, Hayward, Castro Valley, and Pleasanton. Well, we know this is a statewide problem where abandoned children, abandoned babies have taken place. Some of the particulars, how many other states have a safe surrender provision longer than our current 72 hours?
35 other states have longer than 72 hours. In fact, 20 states have provisions of 30 days or longer, and 2 states in the United States have up to 1 year in which they allow the mothers to surrender their babies. Now, I'm not advocating for a 1-year period. I think it's a little bit too long, but clearly 30 days, I think, is a good compromise. We've arrived at the 30 days based on the testimony of physicians, OBGYNs, people that are involved with the diagnosis of clinical depression. And in fact, if you look at the legal codes today under the Health and Safety Code and criminal codes, newborns are identified and classified up to 30 days. So it's consistent with current law, it's consistent with definitions of newborns, and it's consistent with the recommendations of medical experts.
Thank you. And the current process, safe surrender, individual surrenders the child at a hospital, at a fire station, police station, some of the designated locations. If that person then has second reservations to say, I've surrendered this child, I don't have any issue as far as any criminal sanction, what if that person changes their mind? Is there a period of time where they can maybe 2 or 3 days later say, you know what, I really want to have that baby? Can they, is there a process in here where they could actually change their mind within that period, that window of opportunity?
Under current law, and we don't plan on changing this, the bill doesn't change this, a mother or a father can change their mind up to 14 days after the baby's surrendered. It's basically a cooling off period if the mother has second thoughts. Clearly, there's 2 goals here. One is that the babies survive. We want to make sure that these babies have a chance to live. It's a pro-life bill, as I described in the Assembly. And second, if the parents change their mind, we should always be advocates for reunification if it's appropriate, and the bill will allow for that.
And the other aspect of 1873, parent can drop off up to 30 days. I understand that Texas has enhanced theirs from 30 days to 60 days. The provision that we want to do is 72 hours to 30-day extension.
That's right. And as I mentioned earlier, I think it's consistent with medical experts. It's consistent with our current statutory framework. But more importantly, the purpose is to give mothers an opportunity to assess the gravity of the situation. My wife, we have 2 kids. We're blessed with 2 children. They were both born by cesarean. My wife didn't leave the hospital for about a week. So in many cases, the mothers will still be in the hospital after 3 days, and they're only going to be able to assess the gravity of raising a child on their own when they get back to their homes by themselves. So the 3 days it seems to me to be impractical, and the 30 days is a good compromise and will, I think, ultimately allow for more babies to end up in homes where they'll be taken care of and they'll be loved and raised in the proper environment.
And the aspect of confidentiality, if you can explain that briefly, the aspect of confidentiality with the mother or the individual bringing the baby in for safe surrender?
We've discovered that in many our research across the state, in many instances, young mothers, in particular immigrant mothers, do not want to disclose any information for fear of being reported to immigration and being deported. Maybe they have been the victim of rape or incest. They don't want to report this. They don't want their families to know. So the aspect of confidentiality is critical to make sure that these young mothers have an opportunity to surrender the baby, no questions asked, no blame, no shame is the slogan of the campaign that's been ongoing for 3 years. But we also have in the bill another provision, which is we're not telling mothers to forego the legal relinquishment process, which would put these babies in the track for adoption, where the mothers would continue to have contact if they so wish with the babies. That is part of the counseling that goes on under this bill. It was not part of the original law. So it's really a two-track bill where there's an opportunity to surrender the baby confidentially without answering any questions, but also the people that are receiving the babies are counseling the mothers about legal relinquishment, which is the legal adoption process, so the baby, when the baby grows up, they can have a way to track down their parents, and the parents can keep in contact with the baby once the baby's adopted. So there's a two-track system that I think meets the needs of mothers that have different circumstances for wanting to give up their babies.
Thank you. And I know that our Commission, Children, Youth, and the Families hopefully can assist us once the governor signs this by disseminating information, because there's that issue of how do we alert the public to this change that's taken place, where a mother, and most, I guess it would, young mothers that would have these children that would abandon them for a variety of reasons, to get that word out. And we have a Children, Youth, and the Families Commission within the City of Los Angeles. Hopefully we can utilize the services and whatever else we can do to publicize once the governor signs it. So I would thank you, and if any of my other colleagues have any questions, but I want to urge the governor to sign this, and whatever documents we can send up to Sacramento to urge him to sign this. I understand it's sitting on his desk, and if he doesn't sign it, then you've got to start back. But it's a humanitarian effort, it's a compassion effort, and all we're simply doing is giving those innocent infants an opportunity to have a life and not suffer death. So I thank you for bringing this forward. I totally support it. Any questions from my colleagues? And if not, then whatever we can do forthwith, Mr. President, to urge the governor to sign this Assembly Bill by Assemblymember Tirico. Again, it's Assembly Bill 1873. Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Gruhl is next, Mr. Cardenas, then Mr. Wesson, then Ms. Hahn, then Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti, and thank you, Assemblymember, for your leadership on this issue, and for Mr. Zine introducing this motion. I seconded his motion and the importance of this. And you know, you talked a little bit, I'll ask a question about the education and kind of public awareness, because we all read those horrific stories of babies who sometimes, it may be a day, it may be longer than that, for young women you think maybe don't know. Have you done any research as to the best way to communicate that, or is part of your bill going to help get that educational information out? And hold my time, please.
Council member, it's a great question. The original bill had $5 million appropriation because we really felt that there needed to be a re-upped effort for public awareness. The $5 million was going to be used on an 800 number, which would be available every day of the year for 24 hours, where a person can call in and receive information in multiple languages, quite frankly, about where they could drop off the baby in a safe manner. Because of our ongoing budget deficit in Sacramento, the $5 million was stripped out in the Appropriations Committee. I have personally committed to raise private funds to begin a public awareness campaign around the state, focusing on fire stations and emergency rooms first. Second, we have been working with the media, TV, radio, and newsprint media on a public awareness campaign. They have committed, once the bill, if it is signed, to work with us in partnership on a public awareness campaign throughout California, starting on January 1st of next year, to inform young mothers that they have up to 30 days to surrender their babies. So that is certainly part of what I'm going to do. And as I mentioned in Sacramento when I presented the bill, this is the end of my first term. But I am quite certain that this will be the most important bill that I ever work on, and I'm committed to making sure that the funds are available and the resources are brought to bear to make sure that every young mother in California knows that they have different options, much more dignified, in which we can avoid the tragedy of a young baby being left in a garbage can or in a field or anywhere else. And the fact of the matter is the statistics are unclear, because I am certain that there are a number of babies, dozens, maybe hundreds of babies, that are never found. They're abandoned in garbage cans and dumpsters. We never know about them. We never hear about them. And really, we want to bring that to an end in California, and there's no reason why we shouldn't. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. And count me in, as I know, as many of my colleagues, as you begin to raise the private funds to do that, because I think it is so critically important. Because not only do you lose the life of the child, but the young woman's, most of the time young woman, that woman's life in many ways is lost as well. Because if they are convicted and go to prison and all those things that happen, their life has been forever changed. And so I think this is really a protection for both, and for them to know that they have options available to them. I know that during the year, I don't know if it's a day or a month, that we try to do some publicity around it as well, and the fire stations have signs and a way in which to educate. But I hope that you will count the City of Los Angeles as a partner in that as you develop your outreach campaign and public awareness campaign, because I do think it is so critically important. And our fire stations are a safe haven for a variety of issues, but this one is so important. And we need to work with our schools. We need to work with some of our community organizations to get the word out. So I just want to thank you for your leadership, and also, remind you to come back and challenge us to be helpful as you go forward on that.
I will do that. Thank you,
Okay,
Councilmember.
thank you, Assemblyman.
Thank
Thank you very much,
Councilwoman
Mr.
Grewal.
President.
Councilmember Cardenas is next, Mr. Wesson, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Weezer.
Thank you very much. I basically have one question for you. I apologize if you already mentioned this, but I'll ask you again. How many states have implemented a 30-day policy?
20 other states have 30 days or longer, and 2 states have up to a year. I'm not advocating for a year.
On the 30-day policy, is there any adverse effect or condition that is happening in those states? Any reason why we should be concerned or not follow through with that kind of timeline?
The trend in the states that have implemented a safe surrender law has been to expand rather than to restrict. Even a conservative state such as Texas implemented a 30-day safe surrender provision about 5 years ago. They've expanded that to 60 days. So there has been no research or data that would imply or argue for a shortening of the period. All the data that we have and all the information we've received has pointed towards an expansion. So that I have not heard from any state that they have had adverse effects by expanding the 3-day provision.
Have children been dropped off after 72 hours in these states?
They have. They've been dropped off after 72 hours. Even in California, babies are dropped off after 72 hours now, and people aren't prosecuted. The fire department, the district attorneys, they find that if a baby is dropped off, let's say at 7 days instead of at 3 days, that it really does not make sense to prosecute that. So we already have kind of a blurry area of the law today in terms of the practical application of the 3-day notice. But babies have been dropped off a week old, 2 weeks old. More tragically, babies have been found dead up to 2 or 3 weeks old. And that's really the impetus for the 30-day provision in the bill.
Well, I appreciate the involved answer. I really do. You're really educating me to the fact that a 30-day period, there seems to be no downside. And as far as I'm concerned, if people are worried as to whether or not the child is 3 days old or 7 days old, I say ask the beautiful little baby, and if it doesn't say that it's beyond 3 days old, then just assume that the baby is well within that time frame, and take care of it, find it a loving home, and just be glad that we have a situation where we don't have abuse anymore, or we don't have a situation where there's an unwanted child, because there's plenty of families who will take in those babies. So I want to commend you and thank you for your good work. This is definitely a great piece of legislation, and I hope that the governor sees to it that he does sign it. Do you have the support of the First Lady, Maria Shriver?
The First Lady's Chief of Staff told me that the First Lady usually does not take positions on bills publicly. but privately, as we all know, our spouses lobby us on a lot of things, so we hope that the First Lady will be lobbying the governor on this
Okay, I
bill.
hope-
But we've provided her office all of the information on the bill. And
Well, I
to have
hope
her
she's
support.
lobbying for him to sign it as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Wesson is next, and then Ms. Hahn and Mr. Weezer.
Thank you, Mr. President and members, and I want to welcome the Assembly member here to the council chambers and to say that I'm very proud of him and the work that he's done in this short period of time. It was just announced that he is now the chair of the Governmental Organization Committee, which is the committee that I first chaired when I went to Sacramento. It was the committee that kind of took me to the speakership. But with that said, I think Mr. Cardenas and I were there when we voted on the Ken Maddox bill, which was the beginning of this. We had a serious discussion, and we were proud of the votes that we took on that issue, and it was a bipartisan vote, and people dealt with the issue and not the politics. But it's important for us as a council to vote for this today unanimously, because we want to show the governor how supportive we are of this in this region. And I'm of the understanding that he has until the end of the month, the 30th, to sign this legislation. So it always helps if a body respected, like the City Council of Los Angeles, were to show their support. And the last thing that I want to say, and I won't ask you any questions because you've responded well to Ms. Grules, Mr. Cardenas, and Mr. Zine, for you to take and adjust your schedule to come here, I think speaks volumes about you as an elected, but it speaks volumes where it relates to your commitment to this issue. This is, members, a pro-life issue, and it is a great opportunity for us to afford opportunities to young mothers to do the right thing and to give them more time to sort this out and think this out. So, Mr. Zine, Ms. Gruhl, I appreciate you bringing this to the council, and Assemblyman, be assured that I support this wholeheartedly. I never thought I'd have a second opportunity to vote for legislation such as this.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. I just rise in support of this piece of legislation, and I commend you for really taking this so passionately, and the courage of your convictions on this issue is very impressive to us. And the original opportunity for 72 hours was a brilliant move on the part of society. I mean, it's amazing to me that took so long for us to come up with an idea for young mothers who found themselves in a position with basically a child that was either unwanted or they felt that they just couldn't at that time take care of, that we allowed them to surrender them. But I agree, the 72 hours is too short. As you mentioned, some women might still be in the hospital. They might be traveling. To make it the 30 days makes a lot more sense. I am concerned, however, about making sure that we get the word out. That, I think, is the critical piece of this. We're going to, if the governor signs this, we will allow women to surrender their babies up to 30 days. But if they don't know that they can do that, then we're still going to find babies in trash cans and dumpsters, in back alleys, or as you said, we never found them. In fact, we're still having those instances even though we have the 72-hour law in place. So I'm very concerned on how we get this word out to people. And I'm concerned, colleagues, that the very place we are making available for women to surrender their babies, hospitals, emergency rooms, what's happening? They're being closed. They're being shut down. They're being merged. So I think we have a healthcare crisis in LA County at this moment, but we're also taking away some facilities that we've deemed as safe and appropriate for women to drop their babies off. So hopefully we find alternate sites, and I'm concerned that a lot of young mothers don't know where their fire station is. A lot of people don't. We're in LA, we're building new fire stations, we're moving them from old locations where they've been for 30, 40 years. So what are we really going to do to make sure women know the types of facilities where they are, that they can drop them off? That's the key piece to me in this legislation, is the outreach and the information that we can get to women who are in crisis, who are desperate, who may be depressed, on where exactly these facilities are that they're allowed to safely surrender their newborns.
If I may comment, we're going to take, if the bill does get signed, and we hope that it does, obviously, we're going to take a run at the budget next year and try to get some money earmarked for outreach. The 800 number, I think, is critical for a couple of reasons. When you call that number, you'll get information on what the law is in multiple languages. And the second part of the message will be, maybe you put in your zip code and it'll give you a number of locations where you can drop off that baby based on your zip code. Those two components are critical to the outreach efforts and and the awareness efforts, and to make sure that the young mothers have every opportunity to leave the baby in a safe place with medical personnel. That's the reason we have emergency rooms and fire stations, to make sure that the baby is healthy, and if the baby needs immediate medical attention, the baby will get that. So we're hopeful of that. We're going to do it in the budget. We're going to make a plea for First Five funds at the county, throughout every county in the state, and we're very optimistic that either through the state funding or through private funding, we're going to make this 800 number and the public awareness campaign that's necessary a reality in California in the next 12 months.
Well, I certainly support this, and it's an opportunity to give a shout out to all our firefighters who are already involved in this program. I visited the fire station in Wilmington, 38th, I think, where they actually have diapers, they have formula, they have a place for the newborn to be until it's taken care of. And, our firefighters were known for delivering babies, but, then kind of getting them to the hospital. But this was a new role for them to actually receive a newborn on their steps and actually take care of them. And I know they're very well prepared, and they're a huge partner in this proposed legislation. So thank you to our firefighters who are accepting this new role in what they already do.
Thank you. We have Mr. Huizar, Mr. Rosendahl, Mr. Labange, and then Mr. Zine for a second time. Mr. Huizar.
Thank you very much. I think we may have already covered some of these items, but isn't there some mixed research as to whether 30 days is an appropriate time or not, just given the infancy of the child and complications that may arise with a child that young? Or is it just all the research on the medical side says 30 days is fine?
The opposition research has more, or the opposition position, I should say, has more to do with going from 3 days to 30 days, and people have argued that we're going to give free license for parents to give up their babies by expanding the law. The medical experts and the medical testimony we received in the Assembly and the Senate, and when we took the bill through the process, was unopposed, quite frankly. All of the experts came, including the California Medical Association, the American College of OBGYNs. We had psychiatrists, psychologists, people that are experts in clinical depression. They all came in and they said, 3 days is not long enough to give a mother the opportunity to assess the gravity of the situation and to give the mother an opportunity to surrender the baby. So the medical experts are lined up in favor of the bill. They're lined up in favor of 30 days. They cite all of the things that I've said earlier: current law, clinical depression, C-section, complications of childbirth, all of those things. And we, quite frankly, chose 30 days and agreed to 30 days because we want to err on the side of caution. And it's supposed to be more restrictive. We want to be less restrictive and give the mothers every opportunity to make sure that these babies survive. So the data has not, no one has presented any data that argues that 30 days for medical reasons doesn't make more sense than 3 days. Any line we do is going to be an arbitrary line at the end of the day.
Got it. And what does the data say in terms of when most of the babies who are abandoned are abandoned?
That's pretty clear. Most of the babies are abandoned within the first week.
Within the first week?
Within the first week, yeah. That is clear, and I will concede that.
So why not do 15 days?
15?
Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned, the medical experts felt that 30 days was a good
There's no
compromise.
difference.
A good compromise. The current definition of newborn under the health code and under the penal code is 30 days. Medical definition, medical dictionary definition of newborn is 28 days or 30 days. So it seemed that the 30 days was a logical cutoff point. And let me tell you something. Although the bill received bipartisan support when it got to the full assembly in the Senate, it was very difficult to get the bill out of committees because people wanted me to go under 30 days. They wanted me to go to 7 days or 14 days. And I was very adamant about the 30-day provisions because I wanted to err on the side of caution and I wanted to err on the side of saving more babies' lives as opposed to risking babies' lives. So 30 days is what we agreed
Thank you.
on.
One final question. There's no funding for education and outreach, and I know you mentioned this briefly. I would assume that the media and every other public outlet would be very interested in getting this information out. And in fact, I learned most about this, the law, when in fact it's the media who's taken a great interest in it. And I know here, for example, we've had incidents in our own districts where young infants have been abandoned, and one of the first things we do as a city is announce the safe harbor provision for people who want to take their kids to one of these destinations. So I wish there was money for education and outreach, since not, and I understand you'll be looking for some. At the same time, I think there's many public outlets who take an interest in this to get the word out and make people know if this does pass in terms of the 30 days available to them. So thank you for your support on this and for your work on this. It's so important.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Weezer. Mr. Rosendahl is next.
Just a quick second on this. When you put this together, do you have any opposition at all?
Yeah, the Department of Welfare and Social Services at the state level has opposed the bill, I think mostly because of the lack of funding. They would like to see funding for outreach, I think. I don't know what the nature of their opposition is. And some of the local counties have opposed it, including Los Angeles County, to be
What
fair.
about LA County?
LA County has opposed the 30
Opposing
days.
it?
Yeah.
Why are they opposing it?
LA County doesn't like the 30-day provision. They think it's too long. LA County would have supported the portion of the bill LA County liked, the supervisors liked, was the $5 million. But unfortunately, the Appropriations Committee did not leave the $5 million in.
So you expect the governor to sign this, I would imagine.
I don't know. I'm hopeful that the governor will sign it. The governor has signed 3 of my bills last week. This was not one of them. So it's not clear whether the governor will sign the bill or not. That's why I agreed to come down here very quickly, because the support of this council, I think, will weigh very heavily with the governor and the governor's office, and we hope that he'll sign
And
it.
again, why is the county against it of Los Angeles?
Their position was that 30 days was too long. They felt that
Too what?
Too long. The 30 days was
Too
too
long.
long, and that something shorter, they advocated for 7 days, and I could not agree to 7 days.
Well, I'll just make one quick comment. A child is the most precious that we all have, if we're lucky enough to be parents, and to give a child a life versus a garbage can is obvious to us. So 30 days gives a young lady time to think it through a little bit and think about, adoption and a safe place to put the baby so she's not in trouble. It's all about the future. It's all about the dignity of the little child. So I applaud you for coming before us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it.
Mr. Labange.
Very much, Councilman. Thank you for coming to Los Angeles and your work in state legislature. Question, because I just listened to everyone's comments, is there any way to slip in a requirement through our driver's education program in our public schools that they would notify that this is just something, was that a possibility? Because that's, I think, a vehicle to get to young people that know of this.
If the bill is signed into law, there's a couple things we're going to do next year. One is, as I've discussed, is the funding and make sure that we can fund an outreach program and an 800 number. And the second is look at our education code and other areas to make sure that these young women are educated on the availability of the safe surrender law. So definitely going to look at that.
And also, in the County of Los Angeles has a requirement in restrooms to say if you work here, you got to wash your hands by law. Some simple requirements say something. I don't know. I'm sure the professional staffs could figure out just to make people aware of the opportunities and the alternatives. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you for the suggestions, Councilman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Zine.
Yeah, just to close, Mr. President, Assemblymember, I want to thank you for coming down here. I know that the ride from Ontario Airport here at that time of the morning had to be rather hectic, so I appreciate you coming before us. And when we look about compassion for humanity, we want to be a society that has compassion for humanity. It amazes me that there has to be a fight on this with some individuals that don't want to support the 30 days. And if you look at a 30-day-old child, a little infant that's crying, that needs the mother, that needs to have that nurturing, we're not someone that can, we're not talking about a teenager, we're not talking about someone who's walking, we're talking about something so sweet, so innocent. So we strongly support this, as you've heard from all of my colleagues. And I would ask, Mr. President, that we send a correspondence. I've already sent a letter to the governor's office, but we send a correspondence to the governor's office, unanimous support from this city council, and hopefully get this implemented. And I want to thank you for coming down here. I know you're concerned. Your issue is an issue of humanitarian. We talk about this all the time, and it's right here in our backyard in the state of California. So I thank you for bringing it to us today. You've got our total support. I also want to recognize Tracy Severa from my office. Tracy, who's been behind this from the get-go when we first started to support this for the 72 hours. I want to acknowledge all the work that she's done on it. So, Assemblyman, thank you very much for your efforts and your work on it. Thank you.
Councilman, Mr. President, council members. I appreciate the support and hope that with your support and your efforts, the bill will be signed by the governor.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zine. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this issue? If not, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
That is approved. We'll send that forthwith if there's no objection. Thank you very much, Assembly Member, for being here. It was a pleasure to have you here, and you're welcome back anytime. Next order of business, please.
Mr. President, did you wish to take up 35 out of order?
Was there a request on 35? Yes, Ms. Gruhl?
Department, I called them over.
Sure.
I don't know.
Why don't we go 21, then we'll go 35 right after that. Okay? 21, Ms. Gruhl?
Thank you, Mr. President. If we could have the department come forward. Colleagues, we have before us an item that is the 2006, sorry, we're only in 2006 still. 2006 supplementary call for projects. The last time that MTA had a call for projects was in 2001. It's been a bit of a time since they have been able to come forward with some projects. The bad news is this is only supplemental to existing projects that are there one can be completed within 18 months or begin construction, not completed, within 18 months, has cost overruns, and there are some priority categories you'll see. In January, there will be another call for projects application that will be submitted by this council, and I introduced a motion today to ask that be kind of part of our process and we get as much input as we can from each of the council offices as we go forward on those call for projects. We had this item before our committee last week on a special meeting to go over the original documents that were provided to us by DOT and the Bureau of Engineering, which provided some of the data for that. There were two changes made to that document that included a project in, Mr. Park's district that had been, I think it's just about $750,000, $800,000 additionally, as well as the bikeway, which is in Mr. Reyes's district. That was included as well as part of our report. So, Mr. Reyes, so you know, the Taylor Yards item was included in the final document. There is a project, and I know Mr. Labange will passionately talk about it as well, and I support him in that of adding that onto the list of projects before us. Again, this is a critical part of how we are going to fund some of our transportation programs in the city of Los Angeles and the supplemental. I know that the staff will go over the criteria used, cost overruns, project readiness, and some of the match requirements. And so if I can, just to briefly have the department make a brief presentation before we have some additional questions.
Thank you, Council Member, for this opportunity to come before you. Very quickly, to bring you up to share with you where we are on this supplemental call for process, let me talk a bit about how we're trying to move this forward. Technology is not my friend. If someone can progress the slide. Metro has identified a supplemental call for project utilizing some additional funding that became available. On May the 3rd, Metro Council Board approved supplemental funding to address the cost overruns in projects that had previously been funded in earlier call for projects. The applications are due tomorrow, and projects that are to be included in this supplemental must be ready to begin construction no later than July 1 of 2008, which means those projects have to be well along into the design process, which means they will have cleared any environmental issues that are outstanding, they will have received community consensus on those issues, and then finally, they will have identified all of the items associated with right-of-way, purchasing of land. There are some 7 categories of projects, everything from regional surface transportation improvements, which includes highway, roads, and streets, to transportation enhancements, transit capital, and bikeways. The criteria that was utilized was project expenses, where up to 34 points could be allocated in terms of whether or not there had been a substantial increase in the local share over the original. We have seen project increases associated with the cost of construction materials, as well as the availability of construction firms to do the work. Project readiness, in other words, will it be ready by July 1 of the subject year? And then finally, the scope assessment, which is where was it ranked in the previous call for projects. What we are asking Council to do today is to approve the project list that we have before you with 2 additions. One is a widening of Magnolia between Cahuenga and Vineland. That project is being added. The Bureau of Engineering was able to review its engineering schedule and will be able to initiate the construction within the 18-month period. A second one is the widening of Anaheim between Farragut and Dominguez Channel. That one will also be, again, ready to go within the 18-month period. There is a project that Mr. Labange is particularly concerned about, which is Burbank, and we will not be ready. That project, according to the Bureau of Engineering, will not be ready for construction until 2009. Bureau of Engineering personnel are here to provide clarification on why that particular project will be ready to go. In addition, we are asking that Council authorize the General Manager to amend our MOU with Metro so that we can add the Cahuenga project, as well as authorize the CEO of the Community Redevelopment Agency to amend their MOU with Metro to transfer funds to address a particular project.
Ms. Jeff, could you hold for a second? Sergeant, can we make sure everybody is focused either on this transportation issue, but if they're talking, they could talk in the back so they just give full attention? Thank you.
Where we're going next, which is a critical piece in light of Councilmember Gruhl's resolution, is that we know that in terms of next steps, that the final awards on this supplemental call will be announced by Metro in January of this year, and at that time we will come back to request local funding approval for council for those projects that Metro ultimately determines. The next step is that the submittal for the next full call for projects in 2007, those submittals must be placed in January. We will be beginning the discussions of projects to be included in October of this year to formulate those projects and criteria that the City of Los Angeles will use. We will be including not only representatives of the Department of Transportation, Public Works, and others, but also the CLA to represent the council in those deliberations. We anticipate a package from Metro that we can react to in terms of their criteria in November, and that we will be back to the Transportation Committee in December in an initiative to review the list with them at that time, and then finally come back to the full council in January for their final sign-off. But that's where we are hoping to go. That completes our overview. I believe that we have addressed all of the questions that have been raised with respect to either projects or additional items from the council members via the Transportation Committee.
Ms. Jeff, thank you. Back to Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you. So separate from the list that I received last night, you're adding 2 additional projects. Is
Yes,
that correct?
yes, Cahuenga, I'm sorry, the widening of Magnolia between Cahuenga and Vineland, and the widening of Anaheim between Dominguez Channel and Farragut.
Okay. Could you explain to me, because this is we had the committee meeting on Thursday. We had some discussions, obviously, of a couple items, those that have been added now. One of the reasons I introduced the motion today is I don't want to add projects after our committee meeting. I want it to be able to be fully vetted in the committee. What occurred between Thursday, or even from last night till this morning, to add those 2 additional projects?
What happened at the Transportation Committee was Mr. Labange raised some concerns about a couple of projects that he thought should have been included in the list. Initially, the Bureau of Engineering had indicated that they would not be in construction stage before the 18-month period, until after the 18-month period. They went back and reviewed their project status, determined that in the context of the Magnolia widening, that it would be ready for construction and therefore would be eligible and added to this list because it met the criteria.
And the Anaheim street widening?
That was a simple, as I understand it, an inadvertent oversight, and again, Bureau of Engineering came back and said, yes, that will be ready for construction.
And again, I'm fine with adding the 2 additional projects. My concern is, because there are issues raised in the committee and today, that have we fully vetted to make sure that all of, that there aren't others that fit in that category that have come through in the engineering, particularly as we go forward in the call for projects in 2007. So I want to bring that issue up. Colleagues, I would ask that you adopt with the amendments made today for those additional. Again, the committee report reflected 2 additional projects, one Figueroa and Mr. Park's district, 2 the Taylor Yards item, and then additionally the project in Ms. Hahn's district, and that in Mr. Labange and that item.
And I'm sorry, for clarification, it's widening of Magnolia?
It is widening of Magnolia, Cahuenga to Vineland. It's item number 22 on attachment A, and item number 21, the Anaheim street widening, Farragut to Dominguez. And I'll probably want to speak at the end, but that's...
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. Mr. Rosendahl of the 11th Council District.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have 4 projects in our district. Of course, that's what I want to look at all the time, and I think every council member does the same thing because that's what we got elected by. You have a Sepulveda widening, Centinela to Lincoln. People will say, hurrah. You have La Tierra Bridge widening, which is another one that people are completely freaked about, the frustration. And then there's the Skirball Center Drive widening that my colleague Jack Weiss and I both appreciate, the I-405 to Mulholland Drive. And then you have one more, and that one is also exciting for us. It's the Westchester Transportation Management Enhancement. So I just want to say thank you for looking hard at it. You and I are also looking at Lincoln Boulevard, possibly one way in the morning, one way in the afternoon, because we're just in terrible gridlock in the 11th District. And I appreciate your leadership and the people in the front row that I've been working with on the other projects. And thanks for moving quickly with MTA. What I like the most is MTA and DOT are joined at the hip. And the more you're joined at the hip on this, if we can get Caltrans in the same scene, we'll truly have the kind of mix of the state, the county, and the city, which are critical to get us out of this gridlock. I just want to thank you for your leadership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Reyes of the 1st District.
Thank you, Council President. First, colleagues, I just want to share with you some history here. Please bear with me. But back in the early 90s, the Metrolink is built in Taylor Yards without the proper environmental impact documents. It's built at a time when then Councilman Molina is leaving the seat and becoming supervisor of the district, leaving a 6-month window in which the SCRRA, the Southern California Railroad Association, together with the MTA, proceed to build a regional facility, which is the Metrolink Maintenance Yard. They did it in a lightning speed fashion. They used their transit dollars. They had to convince the voter base that there truly was a viable regional Metrolink system in order to get their support for a 1% tax that was going to be on the ballot in the upcoming months. When that happens, they do it in such a way where there is no representation in District 1. They move on a large chunk of land that the community had been planning for through a community group for 5 years. They were totally dismissed. In comes Councilman Mike Hernandez. I'm the planning deputy. We do our due diligence. We find out all of these incidences occurred. We settle with a memorandum of understanding. In that MOU, there was to be built a pedestrian bridge that crosses from Taylor to Elysian Valley to complete a bike path that can get the people from one side of the river to the other side that will connect to Elysian Park and to Griffith Park. Now, mind you, this is a place that's park poor, sorely needs recreation. It's bringing the river to focus. And now we're in an environment where the MTA and the DOT are actually in a point, if you see the language, we need to step up. I appreciate DOT's work because I know you're doing everything you can to make sure we get this built. There's $3 million on the table, but it's been almost 15 years since anyone from either MTA or our abilities as DOT to get it to this point. Almost 15 years. So my sense of exasperation is one in which no one wants to step up to the plate to take the lead. No one wants to fulfill their commitment. And I've had a conversation with Supervisor Molina. She made it very clear to me, the chair of MTA, that this bridge should be built as soon as possible. So I think we're at a point where both entities, both bureaucracies, both decision makers in the departments should come to grips with the fact that we should be working as a team to make this happen. So I appreciate this step because what you've done is you've brought it to the light. Everyone's been passing the buck. There's always a reason why it shouldn't get done. And really it does echo the type of mentality that exists where one side of the city continues to be penalized and other parts of the city are able to move forward for whatever reason that exists. So I want to thank our chair of DOT. I want to thank you, our new director, Gloria Jeff, Mike Ueno, for your stewardship. But we need to take it over the hump. We need to get it built. And I just want to make sure that Roger Snowball, we're going to send him a letter. We're going to send him the MOU. He claims he's not aware of the MOU, which I find hard to believe. And we're going to make sure that the mayor is aware because he was the assemblyman of the district when this happened. And he also was the chair when this discussion was going on. But now we have new leadership, and I hope to see this come to a whole new level. The Northeast Los Angeles area deserves that bridge. We've been waiting 15 years, and the wrong that has been essentially cast upon this community should be dealt with in a manner where we should hold everyone accountable. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. And now I call on Councilmember Gruhl.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Reyes, for your years of working on this. And I know there was a tug of who was going to do it, MTA or DOT, and DOT to test has been saying they'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. And I think recognizing that is very important, and know that we as a city are behind you 100% and what we can do to be helpful to make that actually happen. And again, many of these projects have been on the list, have been on the table for a long time, and hopefully with this additional funds and that we are successful. How much total is available?
The number has been in the range of $30 to $90 million.
Big range.
Big range. MTA has not identified the full amount of funding they're going to be made available. We are submitting our best list, and conceivably, if they went with our priorities over everyone else in the county, we would capture all of the available funding.
Well, and I know sometimes that this is listed in priority. The document that we have is based on priority, so that, and sometimes as colleagues be aware that MTA has also gone and said, well, we don't think your number one priority is the number one for us. We're going to go to item 5 as a priority. And so we hope that we will impress upon them and the mayor is a member of the MTA and Ms. Molina the importance of following the leadership and the knowledge base that we have is what's a priority for the city of Los Angeles, and that is going to make these projects whole and to get them moving. And again, colleagues, just be prepared. We're going to be coming back with a process expeditiously for our 2007. It's going to come in December, which is always a crunch time for us. And so I ask you to begin thinking about that now as we move forward on that item, and ask for a unanimous vote today and ask that it go forthwith.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gruhl. Thank you for your help on this and your leadership. Madam Clerk. Councilmember Parks would like to speak for the 8th District.
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment is that, and we appreciate your effort in pulling this together, but one of the things I think would be helpful to myself and the mayor as a part of MTA is your voices may need to be heard at the MTA board periodically as we shepherd this project through, and it's competing with funds from throughout the region. So that is an option that's open, and as it gets on that agenda, we certainly will be pushing the LA City projects, but we certainly have a number of board members that have other issues with a small pot of money. But it would be important for those that want their projects that find the time to come to MTA and express their views so that we can get some of that support at the board meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. Madam Clerk, open the roll, tabulate the vote. Who used to say that?
15 ayes.
15 ayes. Forthwith on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Department of Transportation, Gloria, Jeff, and all your staff. Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, is item number 35, and that was called special for cards from the public.
Item number 35. Thank you.
Yes, Madam President.
Ms. Perry, I know you pushed your button. Should we hear public comment first?
That's better. And then I'd like to speak after that.
Okay. We will have 1 minute for each of the individuals here. Call them 4 names at a time. Carol Schatz, Brady Westwater, Matt Dowd, followed by Don Garza.
Thank you, council members. Carol Schatz, president of the Central City Association and the Downtown Center Business Improvement District. First and foremost, I want to thank the council for recognizing that we are a true community in downtown Los Angeles and that the settlement that was proposed last week would be devastating to our community. We want a situation where there are no encampments whatsoever, but we know that some enforcement guidelines are going to be required. We want speedy development of those guidelines, but we also want sufficient input to be allowed from the stakeholders about the issues of boundaries, hours, and feet of the encampments that exist. So we are asking for just a bit more time before final guidelines can come back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brady Westwater? Sorry. I always want to call it wastewater.
How many years have we
sorry.
known each other? Hi, my name is Brady Westwater, speaking for myself. First, I'd like to thank the council for its actions last week, and I hope this is the only beginning of the council looking for solutions now, not just trying to stop bad things from happening, but we need to get the money, the services, and the housing we need. As far as the temporary guidelines, while there are a lot of different stakeholders downtown, I think the people you really need to listen to are the people actually providing to the services on the streets of downtown Los Angeles. They could tell you better than anyone how to best help the people they serve, their clients, the people who are sleeping on the sidewalks. Listen to them. listen to them on what it's going to take to make the streets of downtown safer for everybody and how they could best provide the services that the homeless on the streets need to be able to get them off the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Dowd.
Thank you very much. Tom LaBonge wasn't up there long enough. I want the people on Channel 35 to get used to seeing him up there because he looks great and he's got that enthusiasm that we need. Now, first of all, this enforcement downtown, I think you need to get the EAA onto building some kind of place where people can go in the daytime to get them off these business owners' front doorways, and at least if you've got them all in one place, the counselors and the social services people, they can start to get these people, and if that's where we're trying to rehabilitate people, you just can't have them spread out all over city blocks. But at nighttime, no social workers are out there working, so we need to forget about nighttime right now, have the police out there for emergencies, but in the daytime we need to figure out where to put these people so that we can start to work on them.
Thank you. Don Garza.
Once again, I'm confused, but I'm going to go ahead and repeat what Carol Schott said. I think there should be some input if you're going to do these guidelines of how far away from a business's front entrance should be, because I do live in an SRO owned and operated by SRO Housing Corporation. I think that's very appropriate. Many years ago, those residents actually came to City Hall on the South Lawn to make sure that when they walked out, they weren't stepping all over people. The other thing is, like she said, we need more input. We need to understand what's going on. And you're going to have to do something about this. We don't know what the guidelines are going to be. I had something I was going to say, but I forgot about it because, Carol, I don't know what the heck's, But make sure that when you do these guidelines that you understand that even the homeless people are saying, well, you can't put 30,000 people at night in Skid Row between 9 at night and 6 in the morning. It become very chaotic and very, let me finish that, very chaotic and unsanitary.
Thank you, Don. Our next four speakers, Becky Dennison, Steve Diaz, Tom Gilmore, and Adlai Wertman.
Good morning. My name is Becky Dennison with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. I actually am not going to speak specifically on the guidelines because I'm understanding that there's no decision to be made today, but I am asking you all who keep supporting the enforcement on some level of 4118D to tell us, the public, what you're trying to accomplish by doing that. Because we've been enforcing this law for a really long time. It has never reduced homelessness, it has never reduced encampments, and it has never reduced crime. So I'm asking you, as this enforcement rolls out, to tell us what you're trying to accomplish, and then we can see whether it does accomplish that. And I really would hope that you would clarify that today. My understanding is enforcement will start on some level tomorrow, if not very soon. And I'd like to know what our outcome measures are so that we can come back and evaluate the effectiveness of this supposed tool.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz.
Yes, my name is Steve Diaz, and I'm a member of the Community Action Network. It is a shame that we should still stand before City Council talking about 4118D as a valid tool. What has 4118D done to a community? Has it made an impact on homelessness? Why is it that there's still a large number of homeless people still living on the street? Why is it that there's no supportive housing out there? Is 4118D really a tool, or is this just a tool for Mrs. Schott and Mr. Wastewater to pass down downtown and say to the New York developers that there are no homeless people in sight? Let's really bring an end to homelessness. Let's not criminalize it. Let's not incarcerate it. But let's really create some solutions. Because what has 4118D accomplished? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gilmore?
Thank you, council members. I just wanted to come and thank you all for what I think was a very courageous move last week to continue the appeal against the ACLU and Ninth Circuit Court ruling. I know that they instituted that lawsuit and its subsequent appeal out of a sense of trying to create a more humane and more just society here in downtown Los Angeles. I think, unfortunately, they were misguided in that effort, and I think ultimately they were about to create one of the most inhumane and most unjust environments in all of Los Angeles. And I really applaud you for your work and Jen Perry's leadership on this. I also would like to applaud Chief Bratton and the mayor for moving forward with the Safer Cities initiative. I think it's an extraordinary effort on everyone's part, and I expect to see some significant movement on Skid Row and a much better environment there soon to the benefit of the homeless, which is really job one in all of this. So thank you very much, and please do include the community in all of the further talks about this, because talks behind closed doors aren't good for anybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Adeline.
Good morning. My name is Adley Wertman. I'm the CEO of Chrysalis. Yesterday, after a meeting with some folks at the city attorney's office, I called together a conference call of some of the largest homeless providers on Skid Row. And I'm speaking about on behalf of what we came up with. And the answer is that unfortunately, in trying to do the right thing with 4118D, we have a risk of creating one of the greatest tragedies in the United States. When the circuit court said that you have to let people sleep on the streets if there is no services, that was not their idea to create living on the streets. The idea was to force the provision of services. If this goes forward, you are going to create the largest homeless shelter in America. That will be the streets of downtown. The LAP can do Safer Cities and arrest predators, arrest rapists and drug dealers without having to kick people out of encampments. They can wait until the appeal goes through. Please, let's not backdoor and institutionalize this tragedy.
Thank you. Warren Curry, followed by Hal Bastian, Alexander Maradi, followed by Mr. Hunt.
I'm Warren Curry, the CEO of Union Rescue Mission, and you're presently sitting on property that was formerly owned by Union Rescue Mission until they made us move. So that's how long we've been around. But I got 2 points, one to the guidelines, and that is a new phenomena that we have observed, and that is this area of tents. For many of you may know, maybe others don't, tents are used for the drug dealers to many of them are to identify where their distributor is. And they give them a blue tent and this one a yellow tent, and that's merely for the use of the drug dealers. What goes on? We've had many men and women tell us what goes on in those tents. It's horrible. I would suggest, as you consider the guidelines, get rid of those tents. Now, what can we positively do? Midnight Mission, one of our fellow missions, has a safe sleep program, which I think is credible. It's on cots, people sleep, and I propose that we do the same thing. We have a room as big as this room that's unused for guests. We could put cots in
If we could just
and
ask you to
help maybe
conclude.
250 people.
Thank you very much. Hal Bastian.
Good morning, council members. Thanks again for your actions last week. I come speaking to you in 3 roles. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the Business Improvement District. I'm a resident at 3rd and Spring, 2 blocks south of City Hall, and I sit on the Downtown Neighborhood Council that's just been elected. I think the number one thing that I want to stress to you regarding the guidelines that you're considering to adopt during the upcoming weeks is to understand that downtown LA is now a series of viable residential neighborhoods, and whereas the city of LA prior to this has put the eastern part of downtown as an area of containment for our most tragic people in the society so they can be out of sight and out of mind, they're no longer out of sight, no longer out of mind, and we have to deal with the underlying issues of alcoholism and drug addiction and often mental illness that's resulted in alcoholism and or in homelessness, I should say. And lastly, we need to take a hard look at the people that will not take shelter because they can't stop drinking because they're addicted. That's the big underlying issue we've got to handle. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Alexander Maradi.
Good morning. My name is Alexander Maradi, managing partner of Pacific Electric Lofts, LLC. We have the Pacific Electric Loft building at the corner of 6th and Main. This building was abandoned for many, many years until we renovated it in 2004. Currently, there are 500 residents that live in that building. And as part of these guidelines, I'd like the council to take into consideration that Main Street is no longer an abandoned street. It has thousands of residents up and down Main Street that live there. They deserve to live in a safe neighborhood, just like any other place in the city, Brentwood, the Valley, Silver Lake, and by creating encampments or allowing a certain area for encampments, I think it's an undue burden on the various property owners that you will be designating an area for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt, followed by General Dodger, I can't, and Pete White.
Good morning. Can I have 2 minutes on this one? No? I can't get it. Okay, here's number one. No arresting the homeless for just being homeless. That's out. I'm going to be down there being homeless, and I'm going to be doing a survey on everything. I'll get arrested 25 times if I have to, but I think it's dumb. I do have 60 beds opening up on the 1st or the 2nd of October. I think that all of us should take a survey down there to actually see what's going on, and if they're doing crimes, let's put them in jail for being criminals. If they're homeless, let's find them shelters. If they need mental health issues, let's get them in mental health care. I think it's a category for everybody, and I think to arrest them or to go any other way, not seeing what the problem is, but I think you guys ought to come down there firsthand and actually see what the problem is, and then solve it, and not look at the LAPD to do any work, but you guys come down there yourself at night and see what the problem is. That's the best way to solve the problem.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, General Dogon, I apologize.
From the Los Angeles Community Action Network, and I'm on the streets every day doing community watch. I'm watching a lot of things that the LAPD is doing. I'm watching a lot of things that CCA is doing. I'm watching a lot of things that BID is doing. And I'm going to tell you right here today, it's not about capitalist America in which they're trying to proliferate themselves. It's about finding beds for the homelessness. It's about affordable housing. That's what it's all about. And that's the solution. Until we come to grips in terms of this and do something about it, then this problem is going to stay the way it is.
Thank you. Pete White.
My name is Pete White, also with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. The Community Action Network does not condone any type of criminal behavior on the streets of downtown Los Angeles. Also, we don't condone criminal and civil rights and human rights violations by the Los Angeles Police Department. What we've seen to date is large dragnets being cast over an entire community, and those dragnets being shook out at the end of the day. Driving while black pales in comparison to what we see on a daily basis, walking while poor in downtown Los Angeles. We're saying that prove to us that you can surgically go into our community and remove those causing problems, because historically that has not been what has happened. We're saying that there have been residents on Main Street, Spring Street, all the way down to Alameda for quite some time. It's not just about new residents, it's about residents who have been here for 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our last public speaker card. That closes public comment. Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And before I begin my comments for the purposes of efficiency, if I could have a representative from ITA go to the table, and anyone who's here from LASA or from housing on the motion I did the other day on getting the funding for 500 additional beds. And I believe there was someone up here from ITA. Just to summarize a recap, for those of you who were here last week, the city did participate in a mediation process, and we mediated as a team, led by the Office of the City Attorney, LAPD, our Council President, my office, and myself, and the Office of the Mayor. Last week we did bring in the results of the mediation to the City Council, and the Council voted in a majority to continue the appeal process. Talking is good, and dialogue is good too. But all formal communications or settlement proposals should be directed to the Office of the City Attorney and himself, Rocky Delgadillo, or his designee, Rich Llewellyn. And I would encourage anyone who feels that they have something substantive to contribute to this process, that they do it directly to the city attorney, because the city attorney is the only individual who represents the city of Los Angeles in these legal proceedings. Two things I did the other day, and I wanted to make sure that they were highlighted and that they were acted on expeditiously. In order to facilitate, in order to set the record straight, and to make sure that services are provided in an expeditious manner, I asked ITA department to assist us in creating a very rapid system so that social service providers throughout the city, and in particular in Central City East, Skid Row, could call in every day by 5, 6 o'clock, whatever time they think is appropriate, to say how many beds are available in their facility, their mission, their housing, their transitional emergency, whatever. How many beds are available every single night by calling into 311. And when officers or providers or LAHSA outreach workers are out in the street and they say to someone, would you like a bed? And if the person says yes, they can immediately call 311 and say, I'm in this zip code, I'm in this area. How many beds are available in this area, and can you give me the address so I can take this person there immediately? That will provide us with very valuable information, not only leading up to the census, so that we can get our fair share of federal funding to get more beds. It will help us on a daily basis to actually place people in a bed when they voluntarily say that they want to go. And in addition to that, it will provide a very, very accurate record of what is available on every single night, so that we can make sure that we have documentation that is untainted and clear, so that anyone who can call in and say, I've got these beds, anyone can call in and say, I need these beds. So if you could give us a report on this.
Okay, well, we got the motion on Friday, so we've made some initial contacts. We talked to LAHSA about, they used to do bed counts, and they had some difficulty coordinating information, but we did run into a system at 211, which is the County Health Services, and apparently they have a shelter team that actually is calling each of the shelters every day and doing a head count. So we want to work closely with them and see whether that is the information that works, or how we coordinate with the city information, make that information available as you need. So we just need, I think we need 2 to 3 weeks to conclude that, and we'll bring it to your committee.
Okay, and then just remember, the objective here is to have a count of open beds each night, and that it can be called into 311, logged in, number of beds and location, so that a provider, an outreach worker, LAPD officer, anybody who is offering shelter to someone, and the person says, yeah, I want to go now, they know where they can take them. So we can stop this, there's beds, there's no beds. I want to make it clear where there are beds and how many beds are available every single night. So how much longer do you think it would take for you to be able to come back and give us a report on that?
Well, I understand it's going to be sent to committee, so I don't see why we couldn't do this in 2 or 3 weeks and have the information available.
Okay, could you try to? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. And Mr. President, didn't know she got up. I'm not sure whether there's anybody in here who can talk about the motion I introduced the other day on finding emergency funding for 500 more beds. Is there anybody here who can speak on that? And if not, I'll make sure that they get here tomorrow. But just to refresh, I did introduce a motion in response to the situation to find urgent funding for 500 more beds. And to the gentleman who brought up the issue of Operation Safe Sleep, that is exactly what we are thinking about in scattered sites. Operation Safe Sleep was a very good model of a supervised but somewhat unstructured program to allow people to come in directly from the street into a bed with some running water, with some security, access to services, and while it wasn't completely inside of a building, it was within a space that was secure. And that should enable us to help even more people come in off the street. Now, again, I want to reiterate that all formal communications and settlement proposals should be directed to the city attorney. There is no one else who represents a city in this action other than the city attorney. With that, I'm willing to hold the rest of my comments, Mr. President, and hear the city attorney's report.
Thank you. We have Mr. Rosendahl, the city attorney, would like to come forward first. Okay. We can have, I believe Mr. Llewellyn is here. We come forward and can give us whatever updates are appropriate in the open session.
Good morning, Mr. President, council members.
My name is Rich Llewellyn. I'm with the City Attorney's Office, and we submitted to your members a brief report. We believe that the police can begin enforcing non-nighttime now, and we have had no disagreement with that, including from the plaintiffs. We have had discussions about the exact details of enforcement if they are other than the 50 square blocks and just day versus night. And we have begun discussing with the providers and the business community and the Los Angeles Police Department those issues to see if we're going to further revise and the guidelines and propose guidelines for the Los Angeles Police Department for their enforcement. But we do believe that the Los Angeles Police Department, for their operational reasons, can begin enforcing immediately during the what I'll call the non-nighttime hours of 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. The plaintiffs have agreed that the case is about nighttime enforcement and that will address, thank you, and that will address, we hope, much of the needs of the SCI initiative immediately.
Thank you very much, Mr. Llewellyn. Mr. Rosendahl and then Mr. Weezer.
I'll go to Mr. Weezer.
Okay, Mr. Weezer first.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. So, is there a written report for the guidelines today?
Yes, sir.
There's no written?
Yes, sir. It's
there
a
is.
short report.
Where is it? Did you pass it out?
Yes, sir.
Hold my time, please. Oh, got it. Okay. And as I look through this, so you will enforce 41.18D?
Yes, sir. Well, we will not be, we don't enforce, sir.
Okay.
The Los Angeles Police Department enforces.
And is that all over the city, or is that just in the specified conditions as outlined in the settlement? Because I think the motion that the council passed was that it was going to incorporate some of the conditions of the settlement. And so, in order for me to go back and speak to my constituents, I want to be very clear about what is and is not going to be enforced. So in other words, there is the zone.
Correct.
Okay, so you're going to enforce those conditions. There will be the zone between 3rd and 7th Street, Alameda and Main Street. There's going to be no enforcement between 9 p.m. and 6 p.m. and enforceable at all times and all locations within 10 feet of any entrance, exit, driveway, or loading dock. And, but it's not going to be enforced throughout the whole city. So why are we creating the zone if we're going to still enforce it throughout the whole city?
Councilmember, the lawsuit only addressed this specific neighborhood and did not address 4118D outside this neighborhood at all.
So 41.18D is going to be throughout the whole city.
It always has been, sir.
It always has been. And the guidelines now are within this specified area in downtown Los Angeles between 3rd and 7th Street, Alameda, and Main Street. It won't be enforced between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Yes, sir.
That's
for now, and many people in the community have suggested additional enforcement guidelines, which we are looking at.
Okay, so we are getting that portion of the settlement, right? And 90 days from now, when we come back, how do we know if this works or not?
Councilmember, I think that would ultimately be a variety of ways, to be honest. The Los Angeles Police Department operationally will be reporting to you on how the SCI initiative is working generally, and to the extent that 4118D is part of that. And you'll certainly be hearing from the residents on all sides of this on how the police department's enforcement in Skid Row is working. So I don't believe there's any metrics in a sense of exactly how this is working, but I believe that you will hear from people on all sides of the matter.
Okay. So as this goes along, the LAPD would come up with metrics, not the city attorney's office, as to whether, how we're measuring whether this works or not, because we're supposed to get a report in 90 days to say whether this is working or not, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to know if it's working or not. Who's going to come up with the metrics?
Councilmember, I believe that the Councilmember Perry's suggestion last week was we try a 90-day period to see to see how it works. I don't believe in the end your council, in fact, ordered a report in 90 days, but of course we'd be happy to report in 90 days.
Did city clerk, city attorney, did we get a 90-day, the motion that we passed, does it say 90 days? It's just, I mean, here we have our leading city attorney. I want to make sure that he knows on this case. I want to make sure that whether it was 90 days or not, he's not even sure.
Sure. Why don't we have the reading?
The clerk's memorandum to file states, the purpose of this memorandum is to note for the record that the City Council adopted the motion, Councilmember Perry and seconded by Parks, requesting the City Attorney to provide the Los Angeles Police Department with guidelines needed to conduct operations in Skid Row as that area defined in the Edward Jones et al. Versus City of Los Angeles et al. Case, and to present those guidelines to Council and further encourage the LAPD to move forward with implementation of the Safer Cities Initiative with consideration of conditions as proposed by the ACLU for a period of 90 days. The City Attorney was additionally instructed and authorized to continue the appeal process in regards to the court's decision in the Jones case in all available judicial forums.
I apologize, Councilmember. I remember that was added, and we are happy to report back. I can't speak for the LAPD, but I believe they are happy to report back as well on how the initiative is going.
Are you going to report back as to whether this is working or not, or will LAPD report back as to whether this is working or not?
Councilmember, I think it would probably be, in the end, both of us would be reporting.
Okay. My final comment is I just want to make very clear on what we're doing here, because I don't think anybody has really publicly stated, I don't even think in the newspaper stories, maybe just kind of vaguely went over it. 41.18D will be enforced citywide, except in the area between 3rd and 7th Street, Alameda and Main Street, between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m., and at all times it will be enforced within 10 feet of any entrance, exit, driveway, or loading dock. That's the guidelines we have right now.
Councilmember, at this point, and I just want to be clear, LAPD, I believe, will begin enforcing the daytime, nighttime differential. On the issue of what the exact boundaries should be going forward, today it's the 50 square blocks. It may be people are arguing for different boundaries. And also on the issue of operational doorways, where there should be slightly different rules on that, that is also under further discussion and consideration.
Okay, the 50 square blocks, that is those areas
Yes,
I
sir.
identified. It is
Yes,
that
sir.
area. I just want to be very clear. I was mostly just trying to seek some clarification.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Where is the status of the ACLU and the police on this whole issue today? Have there been discussions since our last meeting? Is there a sense that people are cooperating with each other? Any insight into that process?
Councilmember, I'm not here to discuss Jones. That was not on your agenda. So I'm referring to this issue. We have, in fact, talked extensively with the Los Angeles Police Department, with the plaintiffs, and with stakeholders in the neighborhoods, all three of them, all three groups.
Now, to enforce this, does that mean that in Venice, where I have tents popping up on 3rd Street and 4th Street off of Rose Avenue, that's against the law for them to do that and they can't do it at all?
Councilmember, there are two issues in there. One is whether or not the city needs, as you've been discussing in your ad hoc committee, an additional anti-camping ordinance as an additional tool in their sort of a response to homeless encampments, which we are looking at, and I know your ad hoc committee has been looking at. Currently, 4118D, as 4118A and the other laws are in effect citywide, with the only challenge being to the Skid Row area of 4118D.
Just 2 points. And when Carol Schatz got up the other day and used the word H, which was hypocrisy, it hit the reality that all of us don't want homeless in front of our homes. That is a fact. That is a natural reality. People don't want that. And then when Chrysalis got up just today and talked about getting jobs, obviously, and the whole discussion from the public today was very helpful in laying it all out. But the bigger issue is the 900-pound elephant in the room. Is anybody really talking about it? Which is, what do we do with the homeless as a group over the next period of years when we don't have housing for them? And that's the big issue. Our mayor has done 2,000 vouchers the other day. He put another $50 million into a homeless trust fund. But in the long run, you're pushing it around. I don't want homeless people in front of people anywhere. I want them taken care of. It's a federal issue, it's a state issue, it's a county issue, it's a local issue. It's everybody's issue, right? I mean, that's my comment about this. So if we're moving them from one area to another, if I was Jan Perry, I wouldn't even want to define an area and say you could put the tents up in my neighborhood, because I don't think anybody else would want to do that in their neighborhood either. So the bigger issue for me is how we get the resources together to deal with the problem and give everybody a sense of hope that we're not moving them from one street to another street to another street, but we're moving them to supportive housing with services, which they got rid of in the 80s when they closed down those institutions. So just to make that statement here, thank you.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could you just explain to me what is the difference of what we could normally enforce with this section compared to what these guidelines, what's the difference?
You know, Councilmember, the Los Angeles Police Department are the experts. In general, their enforcement was during the sort of daylight hours anyway. They rarely enforced in the middle of the night, but they had that tool before. And under these guidelines, for now, they will not be enforcing in the middle of the night, this section in this exact neighborhood. But it is true that in general, they didn't anyway.
Okay.
So from a day-to-day operational matter, there is not a great difference.
Okay, what about citywide?
And citywide, sir, the lawsuit again only dealt with the Skid Row area, and any proposed settlement or guidelines apply only in the Skid Row area.
Okay, from these guidelines that we're talking about, does it put any limitations, new limitations on the enforcement citywide?
No, sir.
Okay, so the rest of the city, whatever the boundaries end up being, do not have to worry about distance from a door, a specific...
Sir, the lawsuit only dealt with what they define as the 50-block area, nowhere else.
Okay, but I just want to make it clear to the public that if,
Yes, sir.
as I go down Crenshaw Boulevard and see the guy at 43rd and Crenshaw sleeping in a doorway, a police officer will understand that that is an area that is not impacted by this lawsuit.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, and the full force of that section is available outside of the 50 blocks.
And Councilmember, I probably shouldn't answer that totally, but the only caveat to that, that is 100% correct, is if there was a subsequent lawsuit similar to this one targeting that area, then it could be, then that lawsuit would address that issue. But this lawsuit does not address Crenshaw Boulevard.
Okay, the issue is, the other one I want to ask you about on the logic of associating numbers of beds to the enforcement. Have we looked citywide to see if any council district has more beds than homeless?
Councilmember, I can't tell you what your body has done or what the...
I'm saying from the city attorney in defending us.
Again, Councilmember, the lawsuit dealt only with the Skid Row
I know,
area.
but what I'm concerned about is the view that it may be just step one. If we take the premise and we're settling a lawsuit based on number of beds versus the number of homeless, and we buy that as a premise, is the rest of the city in jeopardy if we have throughout the city more homeless than we have beds in each council district?
Councilmember, we are not here to discuss Jones.
Okay, I'm not talking Jones, I'm just talking theoretically.
In connection with, the lawsuit did challenge this neighborhood. It did say this neighborhood was unique because of the concentration of homeless issues. But I believe someone could make the argument that a different neighborhood needed to provide as many beds as potential homeless residents as well.
Okay.
I don't know how the courts would rule in that argument.
Okay. The other side, my last question is, in dealing with this issue, again, not talking about Jones, how do we look in the future as far as unequal protection of the law as those who believe that they are also law-abiding citizens, yet we're not enforcing the law in their behalf, such as the owners, residents, and tenants of buildings that are in that area or other parts of the city?
Again, Councilmember, those policy questions, I know you have an ad hoc committee dealing with those exact issues, and I think that's the right place for that. If and when we have litigation, we'll be involved. But I think those kind of policy questions about how to balance competing interests, that's what this body is good at.
Okay. But as the city attorney, you don't have an opinion on that?
Councilmember, I don't have an opinion in the abstract about how to balance competing interests. If there's a specific question you have about a proposal that you ask for our legal advice on, of course, we'll give it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Zine, then Mr. Reyes, then Ms. Perry.
Oh, Mr. Garcetti, thank you. This agreement is with the police department and the city attorney's office Because I remember last week when we discussed
Well,
this.
council member, it's actually we have been discussing with the police department what their operational guidelines will be with our advice. It is,
Okay.
it's not, I don't know exactly what agreement means, but we've been working with the Los Angeles Police Department on this, yes, sir.
Okay, we have a representative from the police department here. Can they come forward? Sure. The concern I have is I didn't vote for this last time because I don't believe that we should have discriminatory enforcement in the city of Los Angeles, where laws are enforced in one area and they're not enforced in another area. What I find is discriminatory enforcement practice, where certain areas you're going to be able to do something and other areas you're not going to be able to do something. And there's a task force of 50 officers they've just put in the Central Division from different parts of the city. They may be familiar, they may not be familiar. What I need is consistency in a policy with the police department and not preferential or discriminatory enforcement. And what I find happening with the discussion here is we're tending down that road where we're going to have discriminatory and preferential enforcement. When it comes to Pacific area, when it comes to the Central area, when it comes to Mr. Park said Crenshaw, well, in one area you can do this, in another you can't. We're a city that's supposed to have a police department that enforces the laws. Now, if we don't like the laws, we change the laws, we put amendments. So what concerns me is how we're going to have a certain area that is a protected zone and other areas that don't have a protected zone, and the officers that, through good intention or not, do something, and then they're going to be brought up on a personnel issue to say, you didn't do something you're supposed to do. So the question I have for Chief Carter, where else in the city of Los Angeles do we have this type of enforcement where it's done here and not done there, and it's not done in a citywide matter? And hold my time since I already ran out.
Let me answer.
6 seconds, thank you.
Councilman Zine, let me answer the question.
Chief Chaliff.
Yeah, right, except I'm not
Bureau
a
Chief, Bureau Chief Chaliff.
Is that this area is unique because of the lawsuit filed by the ACLU and the present court decision,
Which we're appealing.
which at this point we're appealing. At this point, we have a written opinion by the Ninth Circuit, and we're trying to operate within those conditions. As far as going forward, it's, I think your point about having a uniform policy is correct. It may be that it may be this procedure, it may be some other procedure, but we have to get through the point of having this Ninth Circuit opinion. And we have discussed the matter with the city attorney, and the city attorney has given us advice that daytime enforcement in this limited area now would be appropriate. And we intend to proceed both in this limited area and throughout the city in enforcing the law as we're allowed to.
But
Councilmember, I also, if I could briefly, the opinion did discuss this neighborhood as unique, and that, in fact, there are reasons why the Skid Row area is unique legally, which goes to partially not only practical questions about are people well trained if there are going to be different rules across the street, which I think the LAPD does a very good job of, but legally whether you could have different rules. At least at this point in the Ninth Circuit, they have said in this particular area about homeless enforcement of this law, this area is unique, so you can have legally different rules.
So how does this differ from Pacific, from Venice? What's the difference? Do we need a lawsuit then to have this type of condition in that area? So then in Venice, they could pitch the tent and live as they do on Skid Row? And could you answer that one before I give you the next one?
Councilmember, as we've said...
You're a good guy. I don't want to pick on you.
No, Councilmember, that's what we're paid for, sir.
Okay, then I'll pick on you.
And again, this lawsuit is limited to this neighborhood. This lawsuit and the court, in its opinion, said it was unique to this neighborhood, so that one could have guidelines for this neighborhood that are potentially different than somewhere else. Could a similar lawsuit be brought in a different neighborhood? I believe it could. The results might be different because of the nature of that neighborhood.
And for Chief Carter, does the police department have any other area of the city where they have preferential or discriminatory enforcement? And you're 30-plus years with the police department, because in my 38 years, I've never heard of something where we have enforcement in this area but not enforcement in that area. It's always been blanket throughout the city. And to compound that, you now have this task force of officers, and I'm sure they're going to be rotated through. What happens when you bring an officer in from Mission or Devonshire, and they're on that task force, and they're not familiar with it, and they do some enforcement, and now we're going to have more problems, because how are we going to maintain some consistency and order within the rank and file when we got a rule here and we have a different rule there? with your 9,200 police officers?
If I could just jump in before you answer that, sir. This agenda...
We're going to pick on you, too.
Well, I'll take some of the heat off of Rich.
Rich doing a good job.
The agenda description is limited to the guidelines of enforcement of this code section, and it is specific to this geographical area. And when we're getting into discriminatory enforcement discussions, we're getting a bit astray from this agenda description.
Well, my question is, you have police officers that are now task force in that area. The Safer Cities program has brought in 50-plus officers from different parts of the city to go out there and do enforcement. They're not all from Central, they're from different areas. Now, they're coming from different regions of the city. They're trained in the policies and the procedures of the police department, and you're trained to enforce the law. So what I would say in my West Valley area, let's not enforce drunk driving law between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning. What I'm talking about is some consistency on behalf of the officers and on behalf of the community, so we don't have a pick and choose. And that's what I'm finding is that's why I'd like Chief Carter to answer this. Where else have we ever had this where it's only selective, and how do we inform all the personnel who are assigned to it?
If I may, there's a very simple answer to this. The officers, not only that are currently deployed in the central area, received 3 days of training, which this was covered extensively. Prior to being deployed in the field, all other officers who will be rotating into central area will receive similar training prior to being deployed. So I think that addresses the clarity, the consistency issue that you raised.
And where else in the city have we ever had this in your history with the police department, where we have a specific area where we enforce during certain hours and don't enforce during other hours?
Unfortunately, Councilman Zine, we have a lawsuit, we have a Ninth Circuit decision, and we're working under that, and that's why it is being done at this particular time.
I understand that, but in your years, how many years with the police department?
Going on 33.
33 years. In your 33 years with the police department, have you ever seen enforcement focused in this arena where you have specific hours where you can enforce and can't enforce in your time with the police department?
I can't recall.
Okay, I can't recall, and I've got 38 years, and I think Councilman Parks has close to 50 years, or 60 years, or millennium, whatever it is. But see, the problem I have is when we're trying to do something right, and I have compassion for all the issues that have been discussed, and I have got great support for Jan Perry and what she's trying to do and clean up this area and give some shelter. The gentleman spoke that they have room available to house people, rooms going vacant, and at the same time, we're telling our police officers, because I'm looking at that aspect, you can enforce the law during these hours, you can't enforce the law during those hours. While the court rendered a ruling which we're appealing, is there a stay that can be put into place so the police officers can do what they want? Instead of what we're basically doing is what was originally agreed upon is the enforcement would take place certain areas, certain hours. This is basically what you're asking us to do, which troubles me since majority of us were opposed to that when this came up last week. But we're going back to that issue of enforcement time and location and hours.
And I'll have to ask you to press your button again, Mr. Zine, if you want to continue.
That'll be my last question, if you can just answer that.
Councilmember, I believe you're asking directly questions about the Jones litigation.
No, I'm asking questions on what you're talking about. You're talking about specific areas.
I think your question was about, can we seek a stay in the litigation, which I believe does relate to the Jones litigation, sir.
That's what?
Relates to the Jones litigation.
Okay. Can I just follow up with one quick one? Disregard Jones. No?
Can you press your button for it?
Okay,
we have a list of 6 people, and we'll get you on it, don't worry.
Disregard Jones. Disregard Jones. Without Jones, would we have this in place?
Councilmember, if you're asking me, would you have given us the instruction last week without Jones, I can't say.
I can say no.
All right, thank you. Mr. Reyes. And then Ms. Gruhl, Ms. Perry, Mr. Rosendahl, Mr. Huizar.
I do appreciate the opportunity to have this, this dialogue for the simple reason that when I look at the accomplishments of MacArthur Park and seeing how we were able to implement a strategy that took out the encampments, the drug dealers, and we opened it up for families, there was and it was anticipated. The LAPD made us aware, Chief Carter and everyone else made us aware that, and then Captain Beck, that we would have to look at this methodically, that once we start cleaning up a certain area, it's going to move into other areas. We started thinking about the next row of blocks around the park and further on out as we implemented the strategy. And so I believe it's been done comprehensively in that sector of the city. But here we have a unique situation because of the geography, because of the housing stock, the history of decades of entrenchment, and what the media has done, and all the institutions and the way they bring people in. So my question is, in the guidelines, are we looking at this notion of being methodical as we move out the drug dealers, as we move out those who come in? They're going to go to other places, and my feeling is that they're going to go into parts of Pico Union. They'll probably go south of the 10, spill out into the Boyle Heights area and to Lincoln Heights, because that's the next concentric circle, if you will, within this target population. Have we thought about that approach? Is that in the dialogue? And if it is there a way you can share your thoughts on that particular strategy? And please hold my time.
Yes, Councilman, that's part of our strategy. We have discussed this extensively with our other area commanding officers, not only in Central Bureau, but outside of Central Bureau. We are going to be very vigilant, and whether or not we have a proliferation, much like we've had downtown, in that, and we will be working with them in a partnership to ensure that we deal with those issues as they arise, when they arise.
Being that I have to work with 6 divisions, which means 6 different captains, 6 different SLOs, and I would appreciate very much if we can have an understanding, at least my office, of how that is being coordinated. Because I think it's a challenge enough to deal with just one division when dealing with such a complex issue. But now we're dealing with 6 divisions with a variety of areas. So hopefully we can come back, or you can come back, with how we can look at the guidelines and how it's going to essentially be used to prevent the spillover effect or contain it, or however you want to phrase that. The fact is we have to be ready for that. And that's something that I'm hoping we can get back.
Yeah, that's really something that's on the forefront in our strategies, because to be perfectly honest with you, I think we are going to some extent, I don't know what that extent will be yet, there will be some displacement, and we need to be vigilant, and we need to be ready to deal with that. So, yes, if you would like your staff to contact me personally, we
Okay.
can do that, or I can meet with you personally.
Appreciate it, Chief. Thank you.
Ms. Gruhl is next.
Thank you, and this has been a very good discussion. I've asked this question to a couple people, not in the public session, so I want to ask you all. The requirements that you're coming forward with, or the regulations, will that ultimately be in the form of an ordinance, or will it just be a guidelines?
Councilmember, the police department is coming up with operational guidelines for their enforcement. If your body decided to amend 4118D or to eliminate it with a different ordinance over time, for example, out of your ad hoc committee, of course you could do that. This process is not leading to an ordinance unless your body decided you wanted one.
Decided one to. And I know that we heard from Chrysalis about, there was a conference call yesterday, and even talking yesterday to some of the LA Can people about feedback and kind of, is that part of what the city attorney and LAPD are doing as well with some of the providers and others about the guidelines themselves?
Yes, Councilmember, actually that conference call came out of a meeting with Chrysalis and others in our office, and we are continuing to dialogue with them.
Okay, because I do think that is important, and one of the concerns I've always had, that something is so cement that there's no flexibility that we can deal with the issues of in 90 days or however many, that all of the good intentions, as we've had historically, which I've been involved in over 20 years. Some things work better than others. There's a different, provide services that are different now than there was then, where the services are able to be provided, all kinds of, I guess, variables in that. And so any kind of guidelines you come up with, some flexibility and discussion and continued input and feedback, not only in the development of the guidelines, but also in the implementation, and to be able to hear from them exactly what's working and what's not working.
We agree, Councilmember.
For the bottom line of really trying to get the homeless into services. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl is next, and then Mr. Weezer. Why don't we go to Mr. Weezer next?
Thank you very much. I agree with Mr. Zine, and other council members have expressed that, I don't like this discriminatory enforcement. I don't like the fact that we're creating a zone and that one area of the city has to take an additional burden over what is a regional responsibility. But I say that knowing that, just last week I had agreed with a settlement because I thought that would allow us to put away this one case, create this area for a limited time, focus on taking the criminal element out, and to get the help who truly need the help, get them that help in that concentrated area. And we would do away with this case. Now I think, in my opinion, in a minority opinion, I think we're in the unfortunate situation where we're getting the zone and we still have this case looming over us. And on top of that, we have potential litigation now where if we enforce, and when we enforce 41.18D in these next 90 days, we may possibly be sued for that. So it'll be an additional case. Just to express what we're doing here today, again, I just wanted to say that I think creating the zone and having this case looming over us again, it doesn't make sense to me. I had hoped that we would get rid of the case and then do this for a limited time, get the people who need the help, and get the criminal element out. But now we're creating the zone. What I'm concerned about is that we don't have any metrics to say, well, does it work or does it not work? It's going to be is it a very subjective? One officer is going to come up to us and say, hey, this is working. Another officer might say, hey, I'm having a tough time. This is not working. Because I think we really need to create some metrics, whether this works in 90 days or not, because as someone who represents that area, I would not want to see this go on until we know very well or not whether this is working or not, and what objectives. We're not even clear how we're going to measure it, to what objective. It's still very vague to me as to what our objective is in creating the zone, and I don't see the end game here. Thanks.
Mr. Rosendahl. Is it okay? We'll go to Ms. Perry to close out. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rosendahl.
I did mention an 800-pound gorilla or a 900, but let me ask the chief something. 6 to 9 in the evening in the winter, sun goes down at 5 o'clock, it might be rainy or cold and this and that. What about that period of time between sunset and 9 o'clock? How do you work that out with people you'll see all over the place and doing this and that? What role will you play in that time frame?
Well, as we have in every year, what we have is a winter shelter program. And in fact, I've had just today a conversation with Union Rescue Mission, Mr. Curry, about their facility when he mentioned that he has an interior facility that may be available. And so we're going to be looking at that. Councilwoman Perry's office, who has been very proactive in this area, there's something on the table in that issue so that we can get our population off the street into a safe environment, and that's critical. Not only a safe environment, but a place where they have restroom facilities and possibly even shower facilities, and maybe even get a bite to eat. It's been successful, very successful in the past. I'm hoping that we will maybe even be able to expand on that, attempt to do that and provide that service for them again this year.
Yeah, I thought the Midnight Mission was fantastic. 2,000 maybe more beds and convert something. And of course, Jan's motion, which I second, for another 500 shelter beds. Let's assume we get 2,500 more beds, okay? And we somehow work that into it. From 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock in that dark period, will you then go out and outreach and say, folks, we got a place, and try to get as many of them to cooperate?
Sir, we do that during the summer.
Yeah.
Our officers who are working out the streets, and they see somebody that is on the sidewalk or something like that, they try and get them into the shelters every single day. Every single one of those officers out there has been attempting to get people into services. I mean, that's their primary issue. The other is the visible law breaking that has occurred, and then they take that, actions on that, but they are always attempting to get people into services.
Sure. Let me ask you this. In the morning, when the sun rises and it's time to move on, where do they put all their stuff? Are we going to set up places where they can put it?
We have a state-of-the-art warehouse that's on 7th Street that's been in effect almost for going on 4 years now, that Councilwoman Perry was very involved in. That has an area where they can store their personal property. They can come in, leave it there. They can come in and check it back out at their will.
So then theoretically, they'll have a tent, they'll sleep in it, they get up in the morning, they got to fold it all up, and then you take it to this place and then pick it up again at night? I mean, is that basically what we'll be doing?
They could be doing that, yes. That'll be dependent upon the individual.
A lot of them, this is all they got, they freak out, some have mental problems and drug addiction problems. How are you going to deal with that when you start taking their stuff away?
Well, we obviously always seek voluntary compliance. Through voluntary compliance, that deals with most of the issue. With those, our officers receive 2 days of mental health training in an effort to make them be able to deal with those situations in a different and more tactful way. It's very successful. We'll have to address each case as it comes along.
So then, when they're not complying, then you'll arrest them and take their stuff and...
Depends on the situation, Councilman.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember, if I could add just a plug for the Los Angeles Police Department. The homeless population is, as you know, a very difficult population to deal with from all perspectives, especially law enforcement. And the Skid Row detail in Central in particular is the best trained, among the best trained in the country, and the most sensitive. And that doesn't mean they don't have tough cases, but in general, I think they do an amazing job. And their principal job is try to encourage people into services. And it doesn't always succeed, and I'm not saying it's an easy day, but they do an amazing job.
Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. To close, I want to say thank you to the city attorney and everybody. The discussion was very good today. I'm going to make sure that my colleagues get another chart in addition to the charts that we already produced with the help of one of our social service providers, showing the number of beds by council district, which you already have, and the number of homeless people per council district, which you don't have and probably need to have that. Thank you, Mr. Llewellyn or Mr. Carter, for clarifying the cold wet weather program, which should be differentiated. We have money set aside for that, and as you pointed out so well, activating it for years now. I have not asked Mr. Llewellyn if 2 weeks seemed like a reasonable period of time to report back. Is that reasonable for you to come back?
Councilmember, I would recommend a longer period to see how the initial enforcement works.
Okay. All right, well, thanks. And then, again, I want to stand in support of your recommendations, and I understand and just want to clarify for the record, Mr. City Attorney, correct me if I misspeak, that the specific boundary question remains under discussion, and I am supportive of your efforts to address those issues, and that we need to maintain flexibility, and I know you will continue your outreach to the stakeholders. And with that, I don't have anything further to add, other than I guess we should just hold this.
There's no action today, but we have one more speaker that just popped up. Yeah, Mr. Weezer?
So, you answered earlier to me that the 50-block radius was where it'd be enforced, but right now the question was that it's still under discussion, so which is it?
Councilmember, the 50-block radius is what the Los Angeles Police Department is starting with today.
Okay.
And under discussion, many stakeholders have suggested different changes to that, which we're talking to them about, where there's no timeline or decision that there will be actually a different boundary, for example.
Okay. So, I mean, the service providers, LAPD, everybody needs to be on the same page, and the homeless population needs to be on the place. So as of today, it's going to be the 50-block radius, and then, but it's still under discussion.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's still under discussion. Good. And I represent a large portion of that area. When will we know what the final outcome of that discussions are, so that we could now be clear? What is the process to let people know that the boundaries have changed?
If and how. We and the Los Angeles Police Department would communicate that, sir. And it would be the Los Angeles Police Department's enforcement guidelines. And we certainly would talk to the stakeholders we've been talking to, which represent the businesses, the residents, and the homeless providers, and the homeless community, to the extent that they're homeless advocates. We've been talking to all of them.
Okay, thank you.
And the council office.
And the 50 blocks that you came up with right now, that's pretty arbitrary, right?
Councilmember, we'd have to ask the plaintiffs about that. They came up with that definition.
Ms. Perry?
One last point, I'm sorry, Mr. President. Again, as we go through this process, I want to reiterate and reinforce that the only person who's our designated legal representative in this process is the city attorney, Rocky Delgadillo, or his designee. And I would ask everybody who may have an idea, a thought, please take those thoughts to the city attorney. Please don't involve outside parties and make them think that you've got a deal and you've got an agreement and that you're representing the city, because in fact, the only person who represents the city is the city attorney, Rocky Delgadillo. So I think it's good to talk. I think it's good to be flexible. I think it's good to exchange ideas, but ultimately, anybody who has a proposal, an idea, again, needs to take it directly to the city attorney, and any representations to the contrary, I feel are counterproductive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Anybody else wishing to be heard from the council on this? If not, we will note and file that. There's no objection. Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, is item number 39, and that was called special for cards from the public.
All righty. One card here from Matt Dowd for item 39. Mr. Dowd?
Don't be changing the names on the cards, because we caught you out the other day, and when you changed them all to Michael Hunt, you were wrong. They were actually all my cards. So I don't think it's right to be changing speaker cards. That defeats the whole purpose of the process of the meeting. I'll answer the question about the discretionary ordinance. They're arresting people on Venice Beach for vending, but they vend all over the city and no one touches them. Anyway, back on the issue, Mr. City Attorney, because you're obviously not paying attention because I'm way off the topic. The San Gennaro feast, this is a good one. It's like a 7-day event, $450 roughly a day. That's okay. We got Mr. L.A. Bonge on it, but I hope this is the last one of these we see with this partnership too. I don't want anybody to get dragged down, because people have to be re-elected first before they get a term extension. First, you've got to get back into office for your second one.
Anybody wishing to be heard from the council? If not, let's open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 46, called special for cards from the public.
Okay, either Matt Dowd or Michael Hunt, under Mr. Safety, if you could please come forward. Either one of you that wanted to speak.
Jack Weiss, good one. Again, I like this one. Disaster preparedness. Once again, I think Mr. LeBon should lead this one, because I know it's one of your issues, and we got a lot in common, Kath Tizard and all. I remember all that. You are the guy to lead this city. So I'm telling you, here it is in the LA Times. Arif Ali Khan, the mayor named him as the Homeland Security Deputy, what you need to do is get this disaster preparedness underway, not be talking. Let's get it moving. Get the attorneys onto Sacramento to reimburse us for the money we've spent already. I hear there's $500 million in that account. So if we get that money, you can start using Skid Row start putting the resort like disaster preparedness, because that's what Los Angeles is going to be like everywhere if there is a real big disaster here. Everybody's going to be out on the street. So let's start getting some resources down in Skid Row and figure out how best we can maintain the people who are out on the street.
Any council members wishing to be heard on this item? Now let's open the roll. Let's close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item 49, call
Only one.
special by
For
Councilmember...
49, there's another one.
Councilmember
49, we have Mr. Zine, and then we have one card as well in public. Do you want to take that first? Whoever put down King Wesson, whether it's Michael Hunt or whether it's Matt Dowd. Please come forward.
City Attorney, can you help us out here?
Hold on one sec. We'll get the volume up. It's up. We'll reset the clock. Go ahead.
All right, can we please use the correct names of the cards for the orderly conduct of the meeting? I want a yes vote on this one. That's cool. And this is item 49. Give it a yes vote. And my only concern is, will City Council be watching the enforcement of LAPD when they're out there working with the homeless? I think each and everybody should go in and watch what's going on.
Sorry, sir. This is about ski mask robberies in the valley. That was out of order. So Mr. Zine is our first speaker, and then Ms. There's only one card on this, and it's been given. Mr. Zine, that closes the public hearing. Go ahead, Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. This $75,000 reward is hopefully an endeavor to bring forth the individuals who've been robbing patrons and restaurants in the San Fernando Valley. I know that there's a ordinance going forward, or a motion or a law change regarding masks. I think, Wendy, you're involved in that. I think with you and Greg, to bring forth a change in law if you wear a mask and commit a robbery to enhance the sentence. But we're looking at over 200 robberies in the San Fernando Valley. Many of the restaurants in my districts have been affected by this, and other districts where individuals with masks go in and rob the establishment and the patrons, and it's creating a fear and anxiety in many of the establishments. So the $75,000 reward, which is posted, will be available for the next 60 days. Once it's signed, put into effect, anyone with information leading to the arrest and conviction of those individuals involved in these robberies, over 200 to date in the San Fernando Valley, $75,000 reward is being posted. So we hope that someone will bring forth that information before there's more tragedies that occur in these robbers that have been taking down restaurants throughout the San Fernando Valley. And if they continue, they'll be hitting other parts of the city, including Wilmington, San Pedro, and other parts. So I know that robbers go where the people are, and these particular vicious individuals have shown no mercy to the patrons and to the proprietors. They've attacked some of the proprietors. I've met with some of the proprietors, and they're very concerned about their safety. So we hope that these individuals can be arrested, and this $75,000 reward will bring forth information from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Ms. Gruhl?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Zine, for your leadership on this and getting the $75,000 reward. As you mentioned, there's been more than 200 robberies, related takeover robberies at restaurants this year, and many of them using ski masks. And it's unfortunate sometimes we have to use money to convince people to do the right thing, but it is our hope that with some of the information that LAPD has been providing to some of the owners of the restaurants, kind of giving them some tips on how to identify individuals who may be suspicious and coming in, and also how to prevent this. But the best way we can try and solve this problem is to be able to catch those perpetrators, and I think the $75,000 will go a long way in doing that, and we will work together to get some of that state legislation that we believe is critical to increasing those the time that they spend in jail, and that hopefully will also be another tool in our toolbox to go after them. So I just wanted to say thank you. We look forward to getting some response from this. I just had another one in my district is near Woodman and Moore Park. not a masked robber, but someone who came in at the Bronco restaurant there, just before closing time, or actually I think after closing time, but employees were still there, and that's the problem we have as well in those locations. So thank you for your leadership, Mr. Zine, and I'm sure we'll have a unanimous vote today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gruhl. That is the last speaker on the queue, so why don't we open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
All right, that is approved. Next item, please.
Item 55, called special by Councilmember Hahn.
Ms. Hahn, we have public comment cards, 2 cards. Do you want to hear this first, or you want to?
Thank you. Colleagues, I just wanted to rise in support of entering into this contract with Rafe Sonnenschein. Really, I've already been hearing about some improvements just in the way the 9/12 Commission meetings have been run since he's come on board. He is figuring out how to get the right issues before the Commission so they can study it and come back with a good report. But we're always talking about institutional memory and how sometimes the lack of that becomes the enemy of the city. This is the perfect person, I think, to lead the 9/12 Commission. Rafe was actually hired by the appointed Charter Reform Commission back in 1997, so he was there every step of the way as both of those panels, the elected and the appointed, were moving forward with the reform of our city charter, the creation of neighborhood councils being one of the cornerstones of that city charter. So I just want to stand in approval of this, and I think Rafe is the perfect person to lead this commission. And I want to have all of us continue to stay in contact with our appointees on this commission. This is really the time that neighborhood councils will be evaluated, will be analyzed, and we can find out what works, what doesn't work. And again, I think Rafe is the perfect person to lead this commission to its final report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. We have 2 public speaker cards. Mr. Hunt and Mr. Dowd both filled out cards. If you'd like to come forward, please. Okay, going once, going twice. Mr. Dowd?
Oh, it's very sneaky, isn't it? It's very sneaky. But I will take my public comment, even though he won't call out the name on the card. It was Smalley Biggs. Because this is a Padilla Parks motion, and it's $500,000. It seems like a lot. Here it is on the bottom of the screen right now. The executive director, consultant, and some other people to tell us how the neighborhood councils are going. I think the neighborhood councils are going great. Great voting turnout at Venice a couple of weeks ago. They all mobilized to beat me out, which is good. I mean, that's a victory. I'm a nobody. At least they all had to get out and bring their people. Anyway, I just wanted the city attorney to tell me what this is in number 2. It says, although the commission may choose to solicit and evaluate several proposals. I just want to know what they are. What's a several proposal?
Thank you for your comments. We'll see if we can get you the answer to that. Mr. Hunt, if you'd like to come forward.
Mr. Garcetti, you're the president of this, and you should be following directions because I think you implicate them. We should be able to have the names.
Just for all members of the public, when the sergeants at arms give me the cards and it's clear who the person is, a well-known person like yourself, we make sure we call on them so the public knows.
Well,
who's
yeah, that's
speaking.
why I want to use the Prince Parks with this comment. Right. Yeah, no, I was supposed to be Princess Park with this one. But nevertheless, $500,000 for the neighborhood council committee is, for executive consultant director. I think that's too much money. $250,000. I think that the neighborhood council should be part of the process. I think that we can reconstruct that in some other kind of way and use the other $250,000 to go for the homeless shelters. Vote no on this one. Show us that you guys are more than just a yes committee.
Let's open the roll on this item, please. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Next items, please.
Next item, Mr. President, is item number 1 that was continued from the special meeting, and a corrected committee report has been distributed to the council. Actually, it's a communication from the chair of Ad Hoc River.
Okay. So we have two committees. Mr. Smith presses button. We can hear from both Mr. Reyes and Mr. Smith.
As making the motion, I have 6 minutes.
Yes, the precedent goes to the committee chair, actually, under our rules. Then it's the maker of the motion, then it's who calls the special. But whatever you want to do.
Well, I was also chairman of the original committee, would have been
Okay.
IGR, which I waived it out of.
First speaker
so.
gets 6 minutes for sure.
Thank you very much.
Take your time.
If I could have Mr. Guglielmo please come forward, and Jerry Miller. While they're coming forward, ladies and gentlemen, what's before you is a motion I brought in on last week dealing with the bill AB 2449, which, when it was introduced in the legislature, was very supportable. It's something that I think we all wanted to do, and that is control the plastic bags that are given out by our markets and end up in our trash, end up on our LA River, end up in our streets, and are truly a problem for the community. When the bill was finally voted out of the Assembly at the last minute, there were some major changes that changed the intent of the bill, changed the bill entirely to something that is really, in my opinion, non-supportable. If I may read from you just a couple points from the bill. First of all, the bill says, the bill would require the operator of a store, as defined, to establish an at-store recycling program that provides an opportunity for a customer to return clean plastic bags to the store. Opportunity, not mandate that they got to do it, it's just an opportunity. Secondly, it says that the bill would also require an operator of a store to make reusable bags, as defined, available to customers to purchase. That's what Whole Foods does, the green bag that I have purchased, I hope many of you as well, but it only says it's got to be available. Doesn't say that you have to do it. Again, it's a very loose bill. The bill would require the manufacturer of plastic carry-out bags to develop educational materials to encourage reduced reuse and recycling of plastic carry-out bags and make the materials available to the store. Doesn't say the store's got to give them out. Doesn't say we have to have every single customer look at it. It says that they got to develop it and make it available to the store. The bill has been watered down to the point that it really accomplishes nothing in the way of state control. It gives the state total control and takes it away from the local government. There's been some argument about that, so let me just read you the language that's in the bill, very specifically on this point. The bill would declare that certain matters regarding plastic carry-out bags are matters of statewide interest and concern. Statewide interest and concern, we agree. The bill would prohibit a city, county, or other public agency from adopting, implementing, or enforcing an ordinance, resolution, regulation, or rule that requires the store to collect, transport, recycle, carry-out bags, and conduct additional auditing, and I'll come back to that in just a moment, or reporting or imposing a plastic carry-out bag fee upon a store except as specified. So you have to ask the question, what does except as specified mean? If you look at the language again under 422254 of the bill, Section B, unless expressly authorized by the chapter, a city, county, or other agency may not adopt, implement, or enforce an ordinance, resolution, regulation, or rule to do any of the following. 1, require a store that is in compliance with the state's laws to collect, transport, or recycle plastic bags. We cannot tell them to recycle plastic bags. We cannot mandate they transport or even collect them. 2, impose a plastic bag carry-out fee. We cannot initiate a fee if we wanted to. There's been discussion. Mr. Weiss introduced a bill, a motion to do that. We're looking at that. Other cities are looking at that. This cuts off that ability altogether. And 3, require auditing or reporting of requirements that are in addition to what is already required of the state of California. It does allow us to continue to do curbside recycling. That's wonderful. What it doesn't do is anything in the way of mandates on the state of California to force recycling, to mandate collection of these programs. It just simply sets up a very, very free-flowing system of encouragement by the markets to urge recycling. This takes away our ability as a city to do anything other than that. And I think on that, it really fails. If you can hold my time, I'll ask Mr. Miller, does this meet our current policy of local control as it's currently written?
Our current policy, no. I mean, this would usurp the council's ability to adopt an ordinance mandating anything different from what the state would put in place.
Okay, and from your viewpoint, is this state bill as written, does it mandate anything other than encouragement for recycling?
It doesn't mandate recycling. What it does mandate is that bins be placed there, that bags be labeled, that, it does mandate efforts to recycle. It doesn't create a penalty. It doesn't establish any specific targets for recycling or require anybody to actually recycle. But it does mandate making it easy and convenient for customers in the store to bring their bags back and to recycle, and mandate certain notification and information stuff.
It's a voluntary system of movement, but not compliance requirements.
That is correct.
Yeah. Mr. Guglielmo, there's two very important issues here that I think this council has been very loud and clear on. One, first of all, AB 939 compliance. If we don't have the ability to audit what's going on in the stores, do we get any credit for diversion then on these, if there's anything at all brought back to the stores?
No, we would not.
So we lose the ability on our AB 939 requirement that the state's mandated us to do, to audit, to control, to determine what's going into landfills. We just lose that altogether.
Correct. We would be preempted, basically.
We'd be preempted. And finally, the issue of TMDLs. Does this allow us then to continue to meet the TMDL requirements by 2013?
This would put the city in a very difficult position in trying to meet the very stringent requirements put on us by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. The trash TMDL, for instance, we know the significant component of the trash is plastic bags, and this would make it much more challenging for us to try and meet that requirement.
Till 2013 when the run of this bill.
Correct.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I think when the bill was introduced, it was laudable. It was something I supported. It was something everybody supported. Since the change has come, the city of San Francisco has gone from a position of support to a position of oppose. The city of Santa Monica has gone from a position of support to a position of oppose. The LA County Landfill Task Force has gone from support to oppose. Heal the Bay has recently written you a letter saying that they now oppose it as well. I think you'll see the environmental movement, who once supported it, are pulling away from it. There are some people still supporting it, but the bottom line is it takes away our control, it does nothing to force recycling of plastic bags, and it takes our ability away as a city to craft our own program to meet AB 939 requirements. So I urge you to support this resolution and ask the governor to veto the bill. Thank you very much.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, colleagues. This is one of those interesting issues that when Councilman Smith brought it to me, I said, of course I don't want to lose local control. And this was, I believe, Monday or Tuesday. Well, actually it was Friday when we had that discussion. So I started looking into it. And I started reading up on what this bill is going to do. By the way, it's already on the governor's desk. We can't change this, we can't amend it, it's there. But in terms of background, AB 939 was adopted in 1989. A state unfunded mandate that told cities they had to recycle 25% by 1995, 50% by 2000. This city tried as a municipality to set up local programs. Ruth Galanter at that time tried to set up a comprehensive plastic bag program. It didn't go anywhere because Bureau of Sanitation said there was cost issues, there's a lot of barriers, it just didn't happen. 3 years ago, Councilor Wendy Gruhl, Councilor LaBonge tried to put together a plastic bag program, and both motions died. We haven't seen anything from it. In the last 2 years, I did use that big stick. I did talk about imposing a fee on every plastic bag. We did get response from the plastic bag industry. And we have been working with the Restaurant Association, the Grocers Association, Heal the Bay, Friends of the Alley River, Californians Against Waste, all these plastic bag manufacturers to work with us on a citywide plastic bag program. We've had over 20 meetings among staff. Formal meetings with all the parties, we had 5. We've been able to accomplish toolkits, information kits, and how do we get people involved from all different languages, ethnic groups, economic sectors to participate. We've got a campaign logo. We've got a campaign kit. We've been able to establish a foundation to clean the river and to raise funds to clear clean river, and provide security. Again, these are our incremental accomplishments. We've established a volunteer program. What I see this bill doing is setting up a statewide base effort. The reason why I was questioning this resolution, because I feel it speaks in absolutes. It says, whereas this measure seeks to take away the city's ability to institute progressive recycling programs and preempt existing programs. Well, if you look at this letter from the Californians Against Waste, it states clearly here from Mr. Mark Murray, Executive Director, a partner in cleaning our environment, AB 2449 does not preempt local agencies from adopting advanced disposal fees on any product. It's saying it does, AB 244 does not preempt local agencies from enforcing a plastic bag advanced disposal fee on any retailer that is not compliant with state law. My point here is there's a lot of ambiguity. We're getting one side of the campus saying we can do these things, the other side is saying we can't. I do know that the CLA has sent several letters to inquire from the Bureau of Sanitation, some feedback. We never got the feedback. All I'm asking is we either send this back to committee to understand what we're doing and get some clarity, because there is too much confusion here. And it's been put upon us last Friday. It was waived out of all committees. I tried to get some questions answered yesterday in ad hoc, but as I have tried, and I've stated to Councilmember Smith, I wasn't going to hold it back. Let's flush it out here. But I really believe there's too much ambiguity, and we should send it back to at least understand what we're deciding upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Rosendahl is next, to be followed by Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to ask a couple of quick questions, okay? The city of San Francisco and city of Santa Monica and all these others have come out against it, and I just want to go with San Francisco for a second. San Francisco has been active in identifying ways to reduce the use of checkout bags, and last year formed an agreement with local grocery stores to reduce bag use by 10 million units over the course of the year. Such an agreement would not be possible under AB 2449. The state cannot reasonably hold local government responsible for managing municipal waste, nor can we achieve our goals beyond state mandates if the state takes away our local waste management tools. And Heal the Bay, I just spoke with Leslie Mintz-Tanneman, and her final comment was, this bill has preemptive language regarding local action fees on plastic bags, which we well know are a significant component of marine debris and solid waste. In Heal the Bay's opinion, this bill simply codifies the status quo and will derail progress in local areas seeking to impose fees. Mr. President, I'm in an awkward spot. I got Greg Smith as a seatmate on my left and Ed Reyes as a seatmate on my right, and I love both of them. So I want to do the right thing. Is this right, what San Francisco was saying in Heal the Bay, that it preempts our local control over this or not?
Yes, it preempts your ability to adopt any ordinance or fee that goes beyond what the state program entails. Now, I will say I don't necessarily agree that the statement that San Francisco's agreement is not possible. I mean, you can always enter an agreement. The question would be how you would enforce it. I mean, you couldn't establish penalties that would be enforceable, but you certainly can enter negotiations with anybody to do anything. And so I would not agree that it is not possible with this bill in place to enter into agreements. It would certainly make it more difficult. But at the end of the day, you cannot adopt a fee or requirements on these 10,000 square foot stores with pharmacies. That goes beyond what the state requires. You can, I would argue, you could legislate stores that don't have pharmacies. You could legislate mom and pop grocery stores. But you could not do anything with the Ralphs and the Vons and the Albertsons and the large stores that have pharmacies.
Okay, just the last point is my city of Santa Monica, which we embrace in the 11th district, they said it's loss of local control, bag collection, not recycling. Many stores already do this and more. Consumer incentives, definition, again, they say for these reasons they're against it. So my problem is when Santa Monica is right on the beach and they have some very progressive laws when it comes to the environment. No smoking on the beach, no styrofoam cups. I mean, really the right things. And you couple that with Heal the Bay and with San Francisco's outlook, I'm in a tough spot. So obviously, I think this was one of these midnight specials where somebody put a slug in there in the bill that caught Heal the Bay, San Francisco, and Santa Monica by surprise. And I feel bad because I'm going to vote that the governor should obviously veto this. But that's anyhow how it comes out. Thanks.
Mr. Zine is next, then Mr. Labange, Mr. Cardenas, and
I
Mr.
received a
Esposito.
call yesterday from Assemblyman Lloyd Levine, who's the author of this bill. He discussed it with my colleague or his staff, urging my support for this. And I'm concerned about the lack of local control. I'm concerned about the ambiguity, but that happens oftentimes when it comes up to the 11th hour, it becomes very ambiguous, and that's what happens with it. If we don't take any position, we just send it back to committee as requested by Councilmember Reyes. We send a neutral to Sacramento by taking that position?
Yes, you would. It's my understanding that the governor is scheduled to deal with the quote-unquote green bills on Thursday. It is on his desk, so if you took no position and sent this to committee, then we would be officially neutral, yes.
So Councilmember Reyes isn't saying support it, he's saying send it to committee. Councilmember Smith's saying to veto it, to vote no on it. Is there anyone from your office supporting this or making the move that we should support it or take the neutral or send it back to committee?
Well, as I indicated, I'm concerned with the last-minute preemption that was put in at the end of the legislative session that did catch a lot of people by surprise. Statewide standards, I know Mr. Reyes has worked very hard on it. I don't think that there's any argument that statewide standards would be appropriate. My concern with local control is obviously localities differ. We have the TMDL problems. We have an issue that we've got one state agency mandating trash reduction and potential fines if we don't. And then the state legislature takes away one of our tools to do that, which would be to enact local regulation to deal with the problem. So I am concerned and would not recommend supporting a bill that does preempt your ability to tailor local regulation to the local need. Now, if the governor does sign the bill in the next couple of days, I would strongly encourage the council to take a position of supporting legislation to amend this restriction in the next legislative session so that if it does pass, that we could try to get some authority back to tailor the local regulations to our local needs.
So it doesn't appear that there's any move to support it, but either send it back to committee or to vote no on it at this meeting today. And he has till the end of the month to sign or to reject? End of the week,
yeah.
And today is Tuesday. 3 days.
Correct. My understanding is that he's scheduled to take up this and other green issues on Thursday.
And the environmental groups are against this?
My understanding is Heal the Bay is now.
I received the Heal the Bay correspondence and also the correspondence I'm sure my colleagues received. So I don't see any movement to support it, but I see a movement either to reject it wholeheartedly or to send it to committee, which in essence would reject it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Labange?
Mr. Rosendahl, can I ask you a question? Because you're a newsman, if I would like to say, from the past, right?
I have been, yeah.
What's a slug?
A slug?
Yeah.
Well,
Where's the
it
term
depends.
come from?
I mean, a slug can be that little parasite animal that wiggles around and sucks
Right, I got
things.
that, but what else? The context you used it a few minutes ago.
Oh, well, bring it back to me.
Well, you said they just threw a slug in there.
Oh, well, what they did was, Mickey is another word, maybe we can get that
Right.
word. At the last minute, somebody pulled something and did something that the environmental community that was close to this issue worked it through the process. All of a sudden, something happened. That's a slug or a Mickey.
Well, I don't know about that. I think it's an old term that they used to use in a printer, because I used to be a printer in my younger days, and they throw a slug in there to change the whole story of the space of the situation.
Well, that's exactly
so
the
it
same
could be
thing
the
I'm
same
defining.
thing.
Yeah, it's
Neither
something
here nor
that-
there. It shows that both gentlemen, Mr. Reyes and Mr. Smith, have good passion
That's right.
for this.
They're great.
And I know that you're tied between them too, and we
love them
both have
both.
that respect. But I think the thing that's most important is local control. And if a city has local control, it has an ability to deal with things a little more.
Well, that's
When
where
you
we
talk
feel
about Santa
uncomfortable.
Monica
Right.
or some of the other smaller cities and some of the air shoes, it may say that, well, we don't have the power. And I think, Jerry, you said King of the Hill, or what did you say, something about government, the form of how government works with the state government has a little more, who's the top person? If you have Channel 35 to have a replay on that particular statement by Mr. Miller. But the point being is it's good to have local control on these issues. I don't know if we take no position on this or if we support Mr. Smith to keep local control. I want to hear a little more. I appreciate what everybody's done on this here, but I'm at a crossroads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. Members, I'm going to read the Legislative Council's interpretation of this bill, and that is the legal counsel of the legislature, and they wrote it in the bill. I'm reading from the bill itself, and it basically goes to the local control issue. And I'll read, the bill would declare that certain matters regarding classic carryout bags are matters of statewide interest and concern. The bill would prohibit a city, county, or other public agency from adopting, implementing, or enforcing an ordinance, resolution, regulation, or rule that requires a store to collect, transport, or recycle plastic carryout bags, or conduct additional auditing or reporting, or imposing a plastic carryout bag fee upon a store except as specified. That's the part of the bill that I don't like. I mean, I like the fact that they were trying to do something that we could use as a tool throughout the state of California to clean up this issue of these plastic bags, which are very dangerous to wildlife, and they are petroleum products, so as they degrade, that's not good for the environment either. But looking at what they did at the last minute, and you look at who supported the bill prior to that amendment, for example, the California League of Cities, which represents interest, especially generic interest of local governments such as cities, I bet you right now, if the board of which I'm on, the League of Cities, were to meet today, they would remove their support from the bill. Right now, it seems that the City of Los Angeles does not either support or oppose the bill, but being that by the end of the week, the governor is going to take some kind of action. He's either going to veto it, which means the legislature have to reconsider it next year, or if he signs it, then by signing it, he's going to remove our local control over this very, very important issue. And therefore, I think it would be wrong for the City of Los Angeles to send a neutral message, or for the City of Los Angeles to send a message that it's okay to take away our local control. The thing that bothers me the most is, I think we need to send a message and say, do not put these slugs, or whatever you want to call them. Actually, the term used in Sacramento in the state legislature is poison pill. They basically put a poison pill in this bill, and that's why many of the people who actually supported this, helped write this legislation, have moved from support to opposition. So this poison pill is something they did at the last minute. It's something that is done in the state legislature all too often, and I think the City of Los Angeles should take a position of opposing this bill. I appreciate Mr. Reyes' position. I'm interpreting it as, you know what, it's a step forward, we're getting something from it, we can clean the environment today instead of waiting for someday when and if and maybe we actually get a piece of legislation done properly. But I don't think that taking away our local control on these matters, which will affect other matters, I think, besides just plastic bags into the future, I don't think that's something that's good for Los Angeles. We need to clean the environment, yes we do, but at the same time, this particular bill is written in a way that is too egregious to us. We can't afford that. So my position is to vote no. To oppose this legislation.
Ms. Gruhl.
I have a couple of questions, because I think we all are a little bit torn on how we want to go in this, because we believe in setting up a program that works, and that locally we have not had as much control or ability to get some of those things done. And will this jumpstart help push it without taking away our local control? I was under the impression, and I can't remember who said this to me, so I may be a wrong impression, which was even with the requirements in there of having state control, that there were still some things the City of Los Angeles could still do. Is that accurate, that if you have a market or some kind of store that is less than the 10,000 square feet, we could put some kind of restrictions on that?
Yes.
That's true.
That's
Are there
true.
other things that we could do if a grocery store was not part of the statewide program, was larger than 10,000, could we put restrictions on them as well? I mean, are there other instances where we could have other fee charges? I mean, I'm assuming what happened in part of this bill was that, some of the grocery stores got together and said, we don't want to do a state program and a local program, and that's why that was thrown in the end. I don't know if that's true or not, but if you just try to the tea leaves. But are there other ways in which, other than a fee, because I think that is probably where the most opposed position would be, is having a state fee and a local fee. Are there other things that we can do on a local level? And hold my time.
Well, again, yes, stores smaller than 10,000 square feet, a store without a pharmacy, stores that come to mind, such as Gelson's, Whole Foods, Bristol Farms, supermarkets that they may not be 10,000 square feet, but they don't have a pharmacy. So as I read the bill, in fact, you could impose something on those. The bill specifically allows the city to levy fines for noncompliance. Interestingly, the bill stipulates that any fines we collect goes to the city attorney's office. But you can levy fines, and arguably an incentive would be for the local, whether it's the district attorney or city attorneys or whatever, to enforce. But with regard to plastic bags on these stores and recycling of plastic, this bill would preclude you from doing anything other than what the state mandates.
Okay. And what would be something different than we would do than the state is suggesting?
Levying a fee as a condition of a development agreement or entitlement, requiring targets to recycle plastic bags, requiring them to count the number of bags, in fact, that they issue, and establish targets and goals for reducing those numbers. All of those things, as an example, are things that you could do with some of your powers of the legislative body that would be precluded by the state law.
Do you want to add anything? Yeah.
What I was just going to add, Neil Guglielmo again, Bureau of Sanitation, is that what we've seen with other preemption issues, electronic waste recycling, for instance, state law that went into effect, SB 20, SB 50, the bottle bill, SB 332, is that with regards to those state preemptions, the state also provides a funding mechanism back to local jurisdictions for programs to deal with those issues. This does not do that. This legislation does not provide us with any additional funding mechanism, and it would basically preempt the city or any city within California from imposing a fee that they could use to put in place those kinds of programs. So it's a weakness that we see in the Bureau of Sanitation, is that we have seen successful state preemptions. Again, the bottle bill language and the electronic waste language does provide a funding mechanism back to local jurisdictions, and we put that back into our programs. Deal with recycling of computers and e-waste, and to recycle cans, bottles, and such like that. So it's a concern we have.
Does it provide funding to the state to do those programs differently than the bottle program or
There's no fees
the e-waste?
imposed. It's just that there's non-compliance and there's issues of fines that can be assessed.
Fines. But that means you'd have to catch them and create
Yes.
a...
And if I could just add one thing that was brought up earlier, was the environmental groups and moving away from the bill. The last that I heard from the Californians Against Waste, the CAW, from Mark Murray, was on Monday afternoon, actually, and via email to us in the Bureau of Sanitation, some folks in the mayor's office, he indicated that while his group has been supportive of this bill, if we believed in the city of Los Angeles, for instance, that we were going to take an active role to either impose some kind of fees on plastic bags or implement programs or do some kind of enforcement, that they would reconsider their position of support. But they're one of the few environmental groups that's still supporting that legislation.
They're one of the ones. So it seems, again, before us, I think Mr. Zine said that, which was either we don't take any position or an opposition position are the two that, okay.
Mr. Weiss, and then Mr. Reyes, and Mr. Smith.
Okay, so it seems to me, colleagues, I mean, if we can bridge the gap that I think we're hopefully trying to bridge on the homeless issue, this ought to be one where we could bridge a gap as well, where every single person who has spoken on this issue is in favor of reasonable, increased restrictions and regulations relating to plastic bags that are polluting our landfills and clogging our waterways. Every single person here is in favor of that. We're faced with a situation where A bill was crafted in Sacramento. We have no ability to know why decisions were made at the 10th, 11th, or 12th hours on that bill, but decisions are made, and we're faced with them. And what I hear everybody agreeing on here, at a minimum, is support for those positive elements of the bill, the ones that set up the statewide program that put into effect statewide educational requirements, encourage recycling, that require a message to be stamped on each bag, encouraging the person who gets the bag to recycle it. So I think at a minimum, as a council, we can support all of those. I realize the governor has to make an up or down decision, but we can at least send Sacramento, if we're going to send a message, and it seems to me from reading the voices of those who spoke that Mr. Smith probably has the votes here, we can at least send a message that is appropriately nuanced and reflects what we really think, which is that we support the positive elements of the bill, and the concerns that motivated Mr. Smith to put his motion in the first place are those solely that relate to what I call local preemption. It's not the right term, but those which limit the ability of municipalities to enact additional regulations in this area. And so if I'm hearing the body correctly, what I would suggest to Mr. Smith would be, would you accept that as a friendly amendment to your motion that would extend and recognize support for the positive elements of the bill, but would note that the opposition of your motion is predicated on those portions of the bill which limit or restrict the ability of localities to enact additional laws or regulations?
Yeah, basically the resolution kind of says that. I think if we were to say to the governor, we support these things, these are the right things to do, we cannot support the bill because at the end of the day it has that preemption in it that kills our ability to do any of that stuff as a city, and that we'd encourage a bill next year to come back and address those issues, and that's fine. That does that job. It states a strong statement that the city wants to do this environmental stuff because we believe in it, but you take our ability away. So.
But I guess all I'm saying is that the way the moving clause of the motion is drafted currently, it's basically, therefore, the city opposes the bill. And if we could modify that moving clause to say that, therefore, the city, you know, and someone can draft this and you can read it off better than I can babble it, but the city supports those elements of the bill that, the positive elements of the bill, and opposes those elements of the bill that limit local control. Just so that's in the moving clause so that the message we've sent is.
But the message has to say veto the bill.
Well, those are my suggestions, and you're the mover. It's your motion, I'd let you draft it however you want.
Because what's not in front of the governor is A or B. It is the bill. And at the end of the day, it's the bill as it in total is before him is that it's bad.
Colleagues, I was just informed by the clerk what's before us, Mr. Weiss, and what we have before us, since it was waived out of IGR, is the Ad hoc River Committee support resolution. So what is before would modify that. What's before us is a vote on supporting the legislation and encouraging the signature right now. Just so you know your yeses and your no votes and et cetera. Just want to clarify that. Okay. So was there any, so that would require probably a reclarification of the motion, but what is before us, the clerk is
Point of order. I'm not sure that's correct. If I waived it out of committee, what is here
is the communication from the chair of the Ad hoc River Committee,
so if
which recommends support of
so if we deny the report,
2449.
then the original motion goes back as...
Correct. It's not that that's not before us at all.
So
It's
there'll be
just
two
that-
votes.
Right. It could, and because it's a communication from the chair, it will require a motion, so it's not formally before us without somebody moving it. Also, Mr. Reyes would need to move it, have a second. So right now, technically, there's nothing before us to vote on yet, but the precedence would go first to a vote on Mr. Reyes' motion, presuming he moves it, or his communication, and then we could look at the motion before us, okay?
And also, I believe Mr. Reyes made a motion to send this back to committee, but there was no second on that, so.
Mr. Reyes is next.
Okay.
I'll second that.
You know, colleagues, what's interesting is that I don't see this as Reyes versus Smith. I see this as an issue of what works. Now, when I look back at what works, when you looked at e-waste, we did give up some local control so that we can have a statewide program to deal with e-waste, which was so voluminous, so overwhelming, not one city could make a difference because it was that profound. When we dealt with the beverages, when we dealt with cans and sodas and bottles in our streets, we gave up some local control so that we can have a statewide strategy to deal with a statewide problem. All I'm trying to do is get to what works. So yes, I know we are paranoid about giving up power. Yes, I do know sometimes we get a little excited because we're giving up local control. But in the end, the benefit, at least in this case, is that we're trying to deal with a regional, statewide plastic problem that not one city has been able to tackle. We have some momentum from the plastic bag industry, and yes, their bottom line is profit and return and my investment. Our bottom line is quality of life. But if I look at the stores that they're looking at, the chain stores, as a matter of fact, this morning my colleagues from Councilmember Perry, that was headed by Councilmember West and his committee, we are trying to invite the stores that don't exist in our districts. In parts of Pacoima, we don't have those big stores. We have stores 10,000 and under. So we need to be able to put together a policy that deals with that whole economic, social condition. And right now, our city is lopsided. We don't have the Galcos. We don't have Trader Joe's. Albertsons, former Lucky's, and all those stores have left San Fernando Road in my district. They left Eagle Rock Boulevard and CD 14. They're leaving certain parts of town. So even if we were to pass this or allow it to happen, we would still have to look at other legislation. All I'm trying to do is figure out what works. Right now, because of the history of this city and the lack of production from our I hate to say this, from our department in the past, Ruth Galanter's motion died. Tom LaBonge's motion died. Councilmember Gruel's motion died. They didn't go anywhere. So I'm just trying to build on the traction and momentum that's been established by a partnership by the associations this far. And yes, I don't like this 11th hour move to tiptoe in the dark and say, okay, let's pull them out now. That I don't feel good about at all. But I'm hearing and I'm seeing, and I have to go and base my faith on the integrity of the word, but Mr. Murray from the Californians Against Waste is telling me that we urge the city of LA to join Alameda County Waste Management Authority, Friends of Los Angeles River, the Planning and Conservation League, the Sea Turtle Restoration Project, Californians Against Waste, and others in supporting this practical and responsible first step towards dealing with the problem of plastic bag, litter, and waste. Who do you believe? Heal the Bay because they're in the west part of the city and they have money and they control the beaches? Or do I believe the Friends of the Valley River who are upstream in the poor neighborhoods attacking an area and a resource that everyone's neglected? So I'm sorry, I take that back. Okay, I apologize. But the fact is, we do have income differences, we do have socioeconomic differences, and I'm trying to understand who do you listen to? Because I believe Heal the Bay and Friends of the Valley River, in the end, we need to work together to resolve a regional issue. So I'm just trying to understand what's best at this time. So I appeal to my colleagues, and we'll keep working together. I still believe we can work with our legislators. Whatever is passed, or whatever the governor signs, we would hope we could amend in the future. Is that possible? We can always amend a bill?
Absolutely. If he signs the bill, I would suggest that the council do take a position to seek amendments to get back some local control, specifically as it relates to TMDL compliance.
So California League of Cities, with all the other groups, can amend this bill to make sure we don't lose local control, but we're working within a statewide strategy? That's possible as well?
It is possible, sure.
Okay, so it's not the end of the world in terms of our strategies in building up legislative language that deals with this issue. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith and then Mr. LaBonge, do you want to close, Mr. Smith? So go to Mr. LaBonge first, or do you want to go? No? Go. Okay.
Just 1 minute, just a point there. I bet you there's a lot of senior citizens who watch us during the day, and they like plastic bags. And they probably put the plastic bags in the right containers or recycle them at their local markets. Because some people were expressing harsh words for plastic bags. I thought of the seniors who may carry their groceries upstairs and the need for it. So there is a value to, I remember a box boy. The box boys were old cardboard boxes. Now there's no more cardboard boxes because they ship a lot of stuff in plastic containers. And then they have the paper goods, and we wanted to save the trees, which is important to do, so we went to plastic. It all goes back to keeping the streets clean and enforcing laws, which we don't do on litter on this issue here. But I'll leave it to Mr. Smith to help us figure this out.
Mr. Smith.
Well, I think that's a very important issue, and Mr. Labange, we can't figure it out if we let this bill pass. We have no right to. We have no ability to. We don't have the ability as a city, because the word prohibit is in the bill. It prohibits the city from doing anything else on its own. I think that's a critical point. And I want to commend Mr. Reyes. Both of us are on the same side of this issue, quite frankly. We both want to do the best thing we can do to get this stuff out of our waste stream, out of our rivers, out of our communities. It's a matter of definition how we're going to do that. And both of us are on the same side of this issue. It's just how best this bill can accomplish that. I believe the bill preempts it. I believe that if you look at the language and it says prohibit, it says the city cannot do anything different. In dealing with e-waste, we get a check from the state to do e-waste. So while e-waste was important, we got money to do it. In dealing with the bottle bill, the constituents had to pay money, and they got it back if they complied. So there was a stick in both of those cases. There's some ability to make them comply. We lose that in this bill. The state doesn't do it, and we can't do it. So I ask you to reject the River report, accept my motion. I'll accept the friendly amendment that we structure the language in a way that says we encourage this. We want that, but the bill at the final stages says we have, as a city, have no ability to control our own future as it deals with TMDLs, as it deals with AB 939. It takes away too much ability to meet the demands that have been placed on us by either a court or by the state of California. And therefore, the ideal thing to do is to veto the bill, Mr. Governor, and then come back next year and craft one that does those things that we all believe in, and that is get those bags out of the waste stream and out of our water and our environment.
Your colleagues, though.
I'm asking if you support my argument that you vote no on Mr. Reyes's River Committee report, and then we go back on the second vote and adopt my motion, which I'll accept as a friendly amendment, Mr. Weiss's language that we make
Is there
very
any objection
clearly
to
our
the friendly amendment? It has to be accepted by the whole body. If there's no objection, it will be entered as friendly then. Okay. All right, colleagues, we have 3 votes actually before us. The first one, or possibly, the first one was Mr. Reyes's motion to send back to committee. The item will take precedence. That will be the first one. So this first vote, colleagues, again, will be on sending back to committee the item. Okay? Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 7 noes.
That is an eight person vote, Madam Clerk?
Yes, it is. And just for clarification, would that be going back to Ad Hoc River or
The motion-
to IGR?
10-vote item because it was a
That's what I was
recommendation
checking.
of the chair.
That's what I was just checking on. And the clerk has said it's an 8-vote item. Is that correct? Hold on. We're going to get a clarification.
It's an 8-vote item.
Mr. Reyes, your motion to send that back to which committee was that?
Which is the most appropriate.
Well, why don't we, we're going to need to, let's make sure it's clear then, so people know. You need to specify which
Environmental,
one.
please? Environmental
Mr. President, I was recycling, believe it or not, I was bound to post. So I'd like a revote.
Well, hold on, we're going to
Same
vote
request,
because
Mr.
to make it clear. So the motion to specify that Mr. Reyes put forward is to send it back to Energy and Environment Committee? Okay. Please open the roll on sending it to committee. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
7 ayes, 8 noes.
Okay, that does not go. Next, Mr. Reyes, you would have to move the ad hoc committee report if you want to have that before us. Otherwise, we will go back to the motion that Mr. Smith has as amended.
What are you asking for?
It would be 10 votes to consider. It's already considered, so it would be an 8-vote item.
Okay. So, Mr. Reyes, did you want to move?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Did you want to
please?
move your communication from the, because it's communication, not a majority vote from the River Committee, you'd have to move it here in council.
I'll move it.
Okay? That is
And
moved.
is there a second?
I'll give him the second on that. Okay.
Now, does that become a 10-vote item? Because it's a recommendation from the chair, not a...
It's 10 votes to consider. It's already been considered, so
Is there an
it's an
we
8-vote
can vote on the
item.
consideration. If you'd like to call for a vote on consideration, that is a 10-person item.
Yes, I call for a vote on
Okay.
consideration.
This is on the consideration of this, colleagues.
No. This was a recommendation of the chair. It was not a committee vote.
Can we have the
And
city
so-
attorney please opine as to whether or not it
You-
requires another vote for consideration?
Usually, a matter, it's considered unless there's a vote on whether to consider the item. So if a matter...
If somebody moves to consider it, though, it's required that we take a formal vote?
Right, but that's taken before they consider it, before they discuss it.
Well, we have something, Mr. City Attorney, we have something agendized before us.
Yeah, it was agendized.
Correct. If somebody
It is a
were...
communication from the chair of the committee, correct?
That's correct.
So then a communication from the chair of the committee requires what action to move forward? There is no consideration vote?
Before the matter's discussed, that's the time at which somebody must make a motion objecting to whether to
So
consider
because there
it.
was no objection at the time when this was before us, it is before us. It's not a 10-person vote, it's just an 8-person vote. Okay?
That's correct.
All right, so we have Mr. Reyes's
vote.
motion of the communication from the chair. Please open the roll. This is on the Ad hoc River.
Pardon me, I just want to understand. This is on the sum and substance of the report from the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is to support 249,
Right,
not
which
to
is to
oppose
support
it.
the,
So
to
this is
support the
yes or
bill
no.
and getting it signed. Correct.
Okay, yeah, okay. Dion, if I'm correct, a yes vote at this point is to support Mr. Reyes's position to support 249, which is the committee report. A no vote would be to ask the governor to veto it, which is my original, would be to deny first the committee report, then we'll
Correct.
come back and vote on my original
Correct,
motion.
if it does not go.
That's correct.
So this will be a no vote if you,
So I presume, just to clarify, folks, to simplify, Mr. Reyes is asking for a yes, Mr. Smith is asking for a no, but I'm sure you're also thinking about the issue very carefully, too. Please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 7 noes.
That passes. Next item, please.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Sorry, before we move on, any questions, colleagues? Mr. Padilla? Okay, we voted on Mr. Reyes's motion, it passed.
I know, that's why
This doesn't look like we got one.
Is there anybody who,
I request the reopening of the roll. 'Cause
okay, is there an objection to the reopening of the vote? I paused for a long period of time, we explained pretty clearly. If there's a formal motion, though, to reopen the vote, that is before us right now. Is that seconded?
You know, I'm opposed to that.
Okay, it's a second.
I'm opposed to
I only
that.
asked the opposition for unanimity's sake. If it's before us with a second, we do have to vote on it, regardless of
People wait till
opposition.
the vote's counted and then they change their mind.
It's now
Somebody
before
walks
us.
out. That's not right. That's not
Let's
right.
open this is opening the roll. Does anybody wish to debate the reconsideration before? Ms. Hahn, did you want to say anything before?
Yeah, come on. Somebody waited to see what the vote was and then they want to reconsider? I mean, that's, you know, we've been discussing this now for, what, an hour? So we knew what was going on. So, yeah, I'm opposed to reconsidering this vote.
Okay.
We knew what we were doing.
Anybody else
Until someone saw the
on the merits of
vote count.
reconsideration? Mr. Weiss?
I think Mr. Padilla asked for reconsideration in good faith. There was I know we spent an hour on it, but at the last minute, there was a complicated series of what's yes, what's no, and he's making the request in good faith, and I think we should.
Anybody else on the merits of
Yeah,
reconsideration?
It's not a courtesy.
If not, colleagues, we are voting on reconsideration right now of the vote. A yes vote is to reconsider, a no vote is not to reconsider. Please open the roll, please close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, it is now back before us. Ms. Hahn, let the record reflect Ms. Hahn stood on principle. Mr. Padilla, on the winning side, asked for the reconsideration, which is his due. We will now vote again. I will clarify another time that a yes vote is to support the communication from the chair of the Ad hoc River Committee, Mr. Reyes. A no vote is to oppose that. Everybody's clear? Does anybody object? Not understand? We will open the roll then. Now we will close the roll. Okay, hold on. Keep the roll open, please. Everybody's vote is in. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
7 ayes, 8 noes.
Okay. That fails. We now have Mr. Smith's motion before us. And that was seconded as...
It's the worst form of government except for
And that's also including Mr. Weiss's friendly amendment.
As amended, colleagues, our last vote is Mr. Smith's original motion as amended with a friendly amendment from Mr. Weiss. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes, 2 noes.
That passes. All right, we will send that forthwith if there's no objection to the acting mayor. All right. Next order of business, please.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those are posted and referred.
There are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Perry requests to be excused Wednesday, October 11th, to leave at 11:30 for city business. A motion is required.
I will move. Ms. Gruhl will second. That excuse is granted.
And Councilmember Cardenas requests to be excused October 27th to arrive at 11:30 for city business. That meets council policy.
That excuse is granted.
And that clears the desk, Mr. President.
Colleagues, now is the time for announcements. Are there any announcements to be made? Mr. Parks?
President, I have two announcements. Our community group, the Recycling Black Dollars Network Mixer, is Thursday, September 28th, 6 p.m. at the Washington Mutual branch at Coliseum in Crenshaw. Their guest speaker will be just a second. The guest speaker will be Mr. Taylor, who's going to be speaking about the upcoming Silver Dollar Classic between Morehouse and Alcorn State. And the second announcement for everyone in the community, that September 29th and 30th, the City of LA is hosting the Silver Dollar Classic of Morehouse and Alcorn State at the Coliseum. It's a black college football classic, and it will be held at the Coliseum, and a variety of events also at the African American Museum. So this weekend is going to be a high-profile college event in the City of LA.
Mr. Padilla, then Mr. Labange.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues, for affording me that reconsideration. Just a quick announcement. Education Neighborhoods was scheduled to start at 1 o'clock today. It's 1:30, almost 1:35 now. So we'll begin the meeting about 2 minutes after the adjournment of council.
Thank you, Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. We had a very successful Sister City Festival last Sunday at the Grove, and some of the folks came from all of our sister cities to enjoy the exchange. It was quite a nice day, so I want to thank everybody for their involvement in that. Also, members, I think the 22nd of September was a great day in Los Angeles because the great Tommy Lasorda celebrated his 79th birthday, and I think we should all send a little cheer to Tommy Lasorda, one of the greatest of all Angelinos. And furthermore, I think we should wish the Dodgers well in this very tough week where they're going to have to climb ahead of the San Diego Padres to win the West. So good wishes for the Dodgers.
Absolutely, from all of Los Angeles. And any other announcements, colleagues? Does anybody have any adjourning motions? If I can please ask everybody to rise in council chambers for our adjourning motions. Mr. Smith.
Yes, on behalf of Mr. Padilla, who had to leave, ask that the council adjourn in the memory of Julia Mendoza Torrio. She was passed away on June 22nd. Julia lived a wonderful life in Los Angeles and dedicated her career as a great nurse and caregiver for 40 years. Her overall passion was cooking in her kitchen. She recently enjoyed traveling across LA on our mass transit systems. She always came back with great stories to tell her friends, and she also enjoyed dancing. Julia was always a joy to be around and constantly displayed love and care. She was truly admired and loved by many and adored as an honorable and strong woman. She is missed by all those she worked for and gave care to, and our hearts and prayers go out to her and her family. She's survived by her son Randy George Cook, daughter-in-law Norma, two grandchildren Randy Tyler and Isabel Esther, her sister Yolanda, her brother Leopoldo, and many friends and loved ones. For Mr. Padilla.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Other adjourning motions, Mr. Reyes and Mr. Wesson.
Yes, I'd like to adjourn in the memory of Chris Pastras, a celebrated pianist, stage actor, and Las Vegas performer, passed away recently in Los Angeles after a 15-year struggle with multiple sclerosis. renal damage to the brain stem and immune system. Cause of death was attributed to heart respiratory failure. He was 65. Chris was the brother of one of my district's kindest, most hardest working leaders, Ted Pastras of St. Sophia's Church in Pico Union, a beautiful Greek cathedral. His brother Chris was the eldest of 2 sons born to Peter and Mary Pastras of Clinton, Iowa. As a youngster and without any formal training or prior instruction, he started playing fundamental but easily recognized classical and popular music on the family piano. He developed so quickly with his musical abilities that by the age of 10, he was widely acclaimed child prodigy. By the age of 12, he was accepted for advanced studies at the University of Iowa Music Workshop and the University of Chicago School of Music for gifted students. Completing his undergraduate studies, Chris transferred to the master's program at the University of Chicago, earning an MA degree, and was preparing to enroll at the Juilliard School of Music, New York, but sacrificed his dream in order to help his family financially. Along with his brother Ted, Chris performed for Steve Allen at Mill Run Theater in Chicago. He also performed with the likes of Della Reese, Don Rickles, Phyllis Diller, Buddy Hackett, and Rip Taylor. He was an active member of St. Sophia Greek Orthodox Cathedral and devout practitioner of his faith. He was also one of the original creative design specialists, technical, musical, and coordinator and advisory consultant of the highly acclaimed LA Greek Fest in Los Angeles. Chris was not married and is survived by his brother Ted and his sister-in-law Jan, 3 very dear godchildren, Tina Dunn, Margaret Zimmerman, Anausha Tamasebi, and his beloved cats, Kukla, Princess, Squirt, Scampy, and Blackie. Funeral services will be held Saturday, 11 a.m. at St. Sophia Cathedral in Los Angeles. His remains will be flown back to Clinton, Ohio for final services and interment at Limp Memorial Cemetery. May his memory be eternal.
Thank you. Second for Mr. Rosendahl and Mr. Labange. Both of them will be added to that. Mr. Wesson.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I rise. There was a tragedy that occurred in my district, a tragedy that occurs too often in many of our districts, in the Baldwin Village area at about 2:45 in the afternoon. 2 individuals believed to be gang members exited a van and approached Mr. Cesar Avila and his 3-year-old daughter, Caitlin. They shot, fatally wounding Caitlin and seriously injuring the father, Cesar Avila. The mother and the rest of the family are devastated. I just chatted with them today, and she asked that we adjourn in the memory of her daughter, Caitlin, who was only 3 years old.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson. Will all members on that? Mr. Zine.
I have 2. The first is David Walter Sutton, passed away September 11th. David Walter Sutton passed away at the age of 85. He was born in Texas on January 31st, 1921, resident of Van Nuys. Retired from a 50-year career in the aerospace industry, was a ham radio operator and a computer enthusiast. A great man, will be truly missed by his family and friends. His son is the Los Angeles Police Department Captain William D. Sutton, South Traffic Division, survived by Michael Sutton, their wives, grandchildren, Matthew, Heather, Michael, and Sarah, and great-grandchildren, Michael, Joey, and Gabby. May David Walter Sutton rest in peace. Also, adjourned in memory of High Betcher, passed away September 20th. Father of former Deputy City Attorney and current Deputy District Attorney Carol Rose, who I serve on the Judicial Procedures Commission with, passed away on September 20th at the age of 85. Decorated World War II veteran, having served in Normandy and at the Battle of the Bulge, was a proud recipient of the Purple Heart. For 19 years, until the age of 81, he gave his time and served as a reserve deputy sheriff in Broward County, Florida. A great man, will be deeply missed by his family and friends, survived by his wife, Mickey, son, Stan, daughters, Carol and Harriet, 5 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchildren. May he rest in peace.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zine. Any other adjourning motions? If not, Madam Clerk, please call the roll. This meeting of the Los Angeles City Council is adjourned. We will next be in session tomorrow, the 27th of September, here in City Hall. Thank you.